Hey guys, tonight we are going to travel back in time to a world bathed in sunlight, smelling of olive groves and the sea. A world of marble temples and brilliant minds, ancient Greece. But we're not here for a straightforward history lesson. No, tonight, you're the main character. And you have a problem. You're just too good minus looking. I know, it sounds like a great problem to have. But trust me, in this world, being blessed with divine beauty is less of a gift and more like being handed a live grenade. You'd probably have a safer, longer life as a particularly uninteresting goat herder. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support is what keeps these journeys into the past going. Then while you're at it, let me know in the comments what city you're listening from, and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see where we're all connecting from across the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first time you realize it's a problem, you're just a child. You're not doing anything special. Maybe just sitting by the family well, tracing patterns in the dust with a stick. An old woman, one of your neighbors who usually just nods curtly, stops dead in her tracks. She stares at you, her mouth slightly agape, for a full minute. She doesn't say you're pretty. She doesn't say you're cute. She just whispers, a blessing from the gods, and then scurries away, making a small, almost fearful gesture with her and a sign to ward off the evil eye. You don't understand it then, but you start to notice. When you walk through the agora, the marketplace, conversations don't just quiet down. They halt. The clatter of the potter's workshop, the haggling over fish prices, the gossip between merchants, it all just pauses. People turn to look. It's not a friendly gaze. It's a look of awe, tinged with something else. Envy, fear. It's as if you're walking, talking solar eclipse. Something rare and stunning, but also something that disrupts the natural order of things. This isn't just normal, everyday preteens. This is something else entirely. Your features seem to possess a harmony, a symmetry that other human faces lack. Your presence has an effect on the world around you. Flowers seem to lean in your direction. Stray dogs, usually skittish and wary, will approach you calmly, undress their heads on your knee. This is the first part of your gift. A beauty so profound it feels supernatural. It feels, as the old woman said, divine. Congratulations. You've been hand-picked by the cosmos to be a masterpiece. The problem is, masterpieces belong in temples, called and revered from a distance. You have to live inside yours. And this is where the fine print on your gift starts to become terrifyingly clear. The user manual, which you never receive, is full of unwritten, dangerous rules. Rule number 1. Divine gifts are never free. They are loans, and the interest rate is brutally high. You learn this through the quiet isolation that begins to surround you. Other children, who once played games with you, now watch from a distance. They are either too intimidated to approach or their parents have warned them away. Too much attention is a dangerous thing. They whisper, not wanting the gods or worse, the other gods to notice their own families. Your beauty has built an invisible wall around you, more effective than any stone fortification. Here's a little tidbit about the gods. They were seen as the source of all great things: skill, strength, and yes, beauty. To have an excess of any of these meant you were touched by them. But being touched by a Greek god is like being touched by a bolt of lightning. It's powerful, it's spectacular, and you're unlikely to walk away unscathed. Historians and classicists still debate whether the ancient Greeks truly believed their gods were this petty and involved, or if these stories were simply allegories for the social chaos that any extreme outlier, be it in beauty, power, or wealth, can cause within a community. Either way, the result for you is the same. You are marked. You also start to understand the second, even more dangerous rule. Your beauty is not actually yours. You are merely its custodian. It is a reflection of the divine, and therefore, it belongs to the gods. This means they take a very personal interest in it. If a mortal artist creates a perfect sculpture, he is praised. If the gods create a perfect human, you become a lightning rod for their drama. Every compliment you receive is a potential blasphemy. Someone says your hair is more radiant than Aphrodite's golden tresses. You feel a chill run down your spine, because you know that goddess has a notoriously short temper and a very long memory. You didn't ask for this comparison, but you're the one who will pay the price. So, you learn to make yourself small. You hunch your shoulders. You pull your himatium, your cloak, up to cover your face. You try to be forgettable, which is, of course, impossible. Your attempts to hide only make you more intriguing, more mysterious. You are living out a paradox. You have been given the greatest of all physical gifts, and you must spend your life treating it like a shameful secret, a terrible and dangerous burden. This isn't a blessing. It's a gilded cage, and the bars are forged from the stares of everyone you meet. You try to hide, to fold yourself into the background of daily life, but it's like trying to hide the sun at noon. The problem is that your beauty isn't just a matter of opinion. In this world, it's a matter of mathematics. It's quantifiable. People look at you and they see a living, breathing embodiment of a philosophical ideal. They see the blueprint. What is that blueprint? Just look around at the art. Go to any major temple, any public square, and you'll see them. The silent, pale judges of your existence. The marble statues. To you, they aren't just art. They're the impossibly high standard you're measured against every single day. They are your competition, and they have an unfair advantage. They never have a bad hair day. They never get a spot on their nose. They're serene. Blank expressions never betray anxiety or fear. They are perfect. And because you look so much like them, you are expected to be perfect. 2. This ideal is called symmetry, harmony, proportion, balance. It's the belief that beauty arises from the perfect mathematical relationship between the parts of the body. A famous sculptor, Polycletus, wrote a whole treatise on it called The Cane and the Rule, or Measure. He argued that a perfect body could be constructed using a system of ratios. The head should be 1-7th of the total body height. The foot should be 1-6th. The distance from the chin to the crown of the head can be divided into 3 equal parts. Chin to nose, nose to eyebrows, eyebrows to hairline. It's beauty by numbers. A very rational, very Greek approach to something as wild and subjective as attraction. When people look at you, this is what they see. They don't just see a pretty face. They see the china made flesh. They see the golden ratio in the curve of your lips and the spacing of your eyes. Your existence is a confirmation of a philosophical truth, and that makes people deeply uncomfortable. It's one thing to admire a statue of Apollo. It's another thing to have him walking through the market, haggling for olives. It blurs the line between the human and the divine, a line the Greeks were very serious about maintaining, and the checklist of divine features is bizarrely specific. For instance, here's a little detail you probably wouldn't expect. The unibrow. Yes, that single, connected eyebrow. What the Greeks called sin-afres. was considered a mark of immense beauty and refinement in women. The most desirable women were often depicted with it. Women who weren't blessed with one naturally would often use a dark powder, like coal or soot, to paint a bridge between their brows. You, of course, were born with it. One more effortless checkmark on a list you never asked to be on. It's seen as yet another sign that you were crafted with special intention by the gods. You catch your reflection in a polished bronze shield leaning against the wall, and you see what they see: the straight, classical nose that runs in a perfect line from your forehead, no undignified bump or curve at the bridge, the full, well-minus defined lips, the almond-minus shaped eyes, and that damnable unibrow, sitting there like a tiny crown. You don't feel like you're looking at yourself. You feel like you're looking at a diagram, an anatomical study of perfection. This is where the scholars of our time would get into a heated argument. Did the average ancient Greek person really hold these rigid, sculptural ideals in their head when they looked at their partner or their child? Or was this an elevated, philosophical concept of beauty, reserved for art, gods, and heroes? Some historians argue that yes, these artistic standards absolutely trickled down and created a real world social hierarchy based on how closely one resembled a statue. Others believe that for everyday people, beauty was likely more practical signs of health, fertility, and kindness probably mattered more than having a head that was exactly 1/7th of your body height. But for you, this debate is meaningless. You are the living proof of the first theory, and it is isolating you completely. Then, there's the matter of your complexion. For an upper-class woman, pale skin was the ultimate status symbol. It was a clear sign that you did not have to labor in the fields under the hot Mediterranean sun. To achieve this, many women would powder their faces with ion, or RUC cosmetic made from white lid. It gave them the desired pallid look, but it was also a potent neurotoxin, slowly poisoning them, causing skull and image, infertility, and madness. You, naturally, have skin like alabaster. You glow with a pale luminescence that others risk their lives to imitate. It's another unearned, dangerous gift. So you are the complete package, the perfect proportions of a sculpture, the pale skin of the aristocracy, the fashionable unibrow. You are a walking, talking, breathing violation of the natural order. You are too perfect, and in a world where perfection is the domain of the gods, this doesn't make you admirable. It makes you a target. You are, essentially, walking around wearing a sign that says, "Hey, Olympus, look at me. I look just like you." And the gods, well, they don't always appreciate the competition or the comparison, especially when it comes from a mere mortal. The first real tremor of divine trouble comes in the most mundane way possible, through gossip. It starts as whispers in the marketplace, then spreads to the looms where women weave, and finally reaches the ears of the priests at the local temple. The comparison. It was bound to happen. Somewhat. Probably a well-meaning, but foolish admirer has said it out loud. Her beauty rivals that of Aphrodite herself. A chill, colder than any winter wind, settles deep in your bones. This is not a compliment. This is a death sentence whispered on the breeze. To the Greeks, this is the ultimate act of hubris, that fatal pride, the arrogance of a mortal comparing themselves to a god. It doesn't matter that you didn't say it. It doesn't matter that you would never dare to think it. The words are out there now, floating in the air, and they will surely find their way to Olympus. You know the stories. Everyone knows the story. They are the cautionary tales told to children to teach them their place in the cosmic order. There was Arachne, the brilliant weaver who boasted her skill was greater than Athena's. Her punishment, to be turned into a spider, forever weaving webs, a grotesque parody of her former artistry. Or Neo, a queen who boasted she was more fertile than the goddess Leto because she had 14 children to let os to. The price for her pride was watching those two divine children, Apollo and Artemis, kill all 14 of hers before her eyes. The gods do not take kindly to being upstaged, and you've just been entered into a beauty contest against the goddess of beauty herself, a goddess infamous for her vanity, jealousy, and creative cruelty. You begin to experience a new kind of fear. It's not the fear of a wild animal or for an army. It's a quiet, gnawing dread. You start seeing bad omens everywhere. A flock of crows flying to the left. A sudden, unexplained crack in a pottery vase. You startle at your own shadow. Every creak of the floorboards at night sounds like the footsteps of a divine messenger coming to deliver your punishment. Sleep offers no escape. In your dreams, you are on a desolate beach. The sand is black, and the waves crash silently. A figure emerges from the foam, impossibly beautiful, her face a mask of cold fury. It's Aphrodite. She doesn't speak. She just looks at you. And, in her gaze, you feel your own beauty starting to curdle, to decay. You wake up in a cold sweat, your heart pounding, scrambling to find a polished bronze mirror to make sure your face hasn't melted. This is the psychological tax of your gift. You live in a state of perpetual, low-grade paranoia. You start to resent the very features that others admire. You scrub your face raw, hoping to diminish the glow. You try to scowl, to mar the perfect harmony of your expression with ugliness. But it's no use. Even your anger is beautiful. Your desperate scowl just looks like tragic, poetic sorrow. Here's a small, strange detail about Greek religious practice. They had things called curse tablets, katidesmoi. These were thin sheets of lead on which someone would write a curse against an enemy, often a rival in business, love, or even athletics. They then fold the tablet, pierce it with a nail, and deposit it in a place they thought was close to the underworld like a well, a grave, or a sanctuary of a Thanoic deity, while many curses were for things like may his tavern fail. A surprising number were erected at a rival's physical attributes. May her tongue falter, may his hands tremble, and, most terrifyingly for you, may her beauty fade. You can't help but wonder how many of those little lead packages, buried deep in the earth, bear your name, inscribed by someone whose envy has curdled into malice. Your family feels the pressure. 2. They become overly pious, making extra offerings at Aphrodite's temple, a little more wine, a fatter lamb, the first fruits of the harvest. It's a desperate attempt to appease a goddess they fear has already been offended. But it feels like trying to put out a forest fire with a cup of water. The problem isn't a lack of devotion. The problem is you. Your very existence is the offense. The central debate among scholars here is whether the gods' jealousy was seen as a legitimate, albeit terrifying, aspect of their character, or as a metaphor for a very human phenomenon, social envy. When someone in a small, tight-knit community possesses an extreme, unearned advantage like your beauty, it can destabilize everything. It breeds resentment and suspicion. The myth of the jealous god might have been a way for the community to rationalize and process this destructive social force. The gods aren't really angry. It's the people who are. And they are projecting their envy onto the divine. Knowing this doesn't help you. Of course, Whether the threat comes directly from Olympus or from the poisoned hearts of your neighbors, the danger feels equally real. You are now living on borrowed time. Every sunrise feels like a temporary reprieve. You are waiting for the other shoe to drop, and you know it will be a golden, divine sandal, and it will not be gentle. You are no longer just a person. You are a problem, a cosmic imbalance that must be corrected. And the gods have a notoriously hands-minus on approach to cosmic rebalancing. The gossip was the spark. The jealousy of the goddess is the flame. And you are standing in the heart of the inferno, waiting to be consumed. The divine attention you feared lost from a goddess after all. Or at least, not at first. The gaze that falls upon you is heavier, more powerful, and belongs to the king of the gods himself, Zeus. You feel it one day as you are fetching water from a spring deep in the woods, a place you started retreating to for solitude. It's not a look you can see, but a pressure you can feel. The air grows thick and heavy, charged with a strange energy, like the moment before a thunderstorm. The birds fall silent, the rustling of leaves ceases, and you know, with a primal certainty, that you are being watched. This isn't the envy of mortals. This is the focused, possessive attention of a predator. And when it comes to beautiful young mortals, Zeus is the most persistent and dangerous predator of all. You know the playbook. It is woven into the very fabric of your culture. The stories are endless, a veritable catalog of divine harassment. There was Europa, the Phoenician princess, whom he approached disguised as a magnificent white bull. There was Leda, the Spartan queen, whom he visited as a graceful swan. There was Danae, locked away in a bronze chamber by her father, whom he reached by transforming himself into a shower of golden rain. The pattern is sickeningly clear. Zeus sees something he wants, and he takes it. His methods are disguise and deception, overwhelming mortals with a divine spectacle that is both terrifying and impossible to refuse. This is the uncomfortable truth behind so many of the beautiful myths. They are not tales of romance. They are tales of power imbalance, of coercion, and of divine right being exercised with zero regard for mortal consent. You drop your water jug. The ceramic shatters on the rocks, the sound unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. You turn and run. You don't know what you're running from: a bull, a swan, a sudden downpour of gold. You just run, your heart pounding a frantic rhythm against your ribs. You burst out of the woods and don't stop until you are back within the relative safety of your village, gasping for breath, your mind reeling. You are now wrapped in a new kind of prison. Before, you were hiding from the jealousy of others. Now, you are hiding from the love of a god. The word love is a hopelessly inadequate and misleading term for what Zeus offers. It is not affection. It is acquisition. You are a beautiful object he wishes to add to his collection. Here's a quirky, but relevant, little fact about ancient Greek courtship, or at least one of its more symbolic forms. When a young man was interested in a woman, he might throw an apple at her. It seems bizarre, almost comical to us, like a scene from a school playground, but it had real significance. The apple was a sacred symbol of Aphrodite, so the act was a symbolic proposal, an offering of love. This tradition is so ingrained that some historians argue it might have been a common, real minus world practice. Now, imagine this. The king of the gods doesn't throw an apple. He throws a thunderstorm. He throws a shape minus shifting miracle. He throws his entire divine weight around. How do you say no to that? You can't. That's the terrifying part. The stories of the women who attracted Zeus rarely, if ever, feature a scene where they are given a genuine choice. The concept of consent, as we understand it, is conspicuously absent. Historians and classicists have long debated how to interpret these myths. Are they literal accounts of what people believed their gods did? Or are they allegories for the way powerful men in the mortal world, kings and aristocrats, often treated women as property to be taken at will? Perhaps they are a way to explain the semi-minus, divine parentage of great heroes. It's more prestigious to say your ancestor was the product of Zeus and a mortal princess than the result of a very human, very ugly power dynamic. Regardless of the interpretation, your situation is dire. The world, once your home, now feels like a hunting ground, and you are the prey. The sky itself, the domain of the thunder god, feels menacing. Every cloud that gathers seems to be forming into a suggestive shape. A sudden gust of wind feels like a divine whisper. You are afraid to be alone, but you are even more afraid to be in a crowd, because you know his gaze can find you anywhere. The worst part is the helplessness. Who can you appeal to? Your family. They are powerless. The local king. He is an act compared to Zeus. The other gods. They are his family. His court. Appealing to Hera. His wife. Is an even worse idea. Her jealousy is legendary, but it is never, ever directed at her perpetually unfaithful husband. It is always aimed squarely at the mortals he pursues, and at the children born from these encounters. If Zeus is the predator, Hera is the one who hunts the survivors. She is the one who sent snakes to the cradle of the infant Heracles. She is the one who hounded Leto across the world, forbidding any land to give her shelter to bear her children. If you succeed in catching Zeus aside, you lose. If he then forces his attention on you, you lose. If you bear his child, you and the child both lose, because you will have earned an enemy in the Queen of the Heavens. There is no winning move. The game is rigged. The board is tilted, and the opponent is the one who made the rules. Your beauty has led you from the frying pan of mortal envy into the roaring fire of divine desire. And you are utterly, terrifyingly alone. You manage to evade the terrifying attention of Zeus, perhaps through sheer luck or by making yourself so reclusive that even a god gets bored. But in doing so, you stumble into a different kind of divine peril. You seek refuge in the one place you feel safe, a temple. Not just any temple, but a sanctuary dedicated to Athena, the virgin goddess of wisdom, warfare, and crafts. You reason that here, in the house of a goddess renowned for her intellect and lack of romantic entanglements, you might finally be left in peace. You become a priestess. You sweep the cool marble floors. You tend to the sacred olive tree in the courtyard. You light the incense that curls towards the impassive face of the colossal cult statue. You find a strange comfort in the routine, in the quiet devotion. Here, your beauty is theoretically neutralized. It is not for mortal men, nor for the lustful eyes of gods. It is dedicated to the service of Athena. For a while, it works. You feel anonymous, hidden behind the sanctity of your role. But you've made a critical error in judgment. You've forgotten that the gods' dramas don't respect sacred boundaries. The sea god, Poseidon, has a long standing rivalry with Athena. Their most famous clash was over the patronage of Athens itself, a contest Athena won by gifting the city the olive tree. Poseidon, ever the sore loser, sees you. He sees your beauty. But more importantly, he sees you in her temple, and he formulates a plan of terrible, calculated revenge. He doesn't come for you in the woods or the marketplace. He violates the sanctity of the one place you thought was safe. He appears before you in the temple's inner sanctum, the naos, right at the foot of Athena's statue. The air crackles with salt and ozone. His power is overwhelming, ancient, and emanating waves of raw, aggressive force. There is no pretense, no disguise, just a god, taking what he wants, not for desire, but for spite. He assaults you on the floor of Athena's holy sanctuary. When it's over, and he is gone, you are left shattered, not just in body, but in spirit. You have been defiled, and worse, the temple has been defiled through you. You crawl to the feet of the great statue, your protector, your patron goddess, and you pray for justice, for comfort, for vengeance against the one who did this. Athena's response is not what you expect. She is enraged. Yes, but her fury is not directed at her uncle, Poseidon. He is her equal, the powerful god. To punish him would be to start a war on Olympus. Her anger, the full, terrifying force of it, is directed at you. In her eyes, you are the source of the problem. Your beauty is what drew Poseidon's attention. You are the vessel through which her temple was desecrated. You, the mortal, are the easy target, the path of least resistance for her divine wrath. She cannot punish the perpetrator, so she punishes the victim. This is the moment you fully comprehend the chilling injustice of the gods. Her punishment is a masterpiece of poetic cruelty. She takes the very thing that caused all this trouble, your beauty, and transforms it into a weapon of terror. She takes your magnificent hair, the soft tresses that once cascaded down your back, and turns each strand into a writhing, hissing snake. She changes your face, once a vision of divine harmony, into a grotesque mask of horror, and she curses your gaze. The eyes that once captivated all who saw them will now turn any living creature to stone. You have become Medusa. This is the story that is so often misunderstood. In the popular retellings, Medusa is simply a monster, a terrifying gorgon whose head is a prize for a hero. But in the earlier versions of the myth, particularly in the writings of the Roman poet Ovid, she was not born a monster. She was made one. She was a beautiful maiden, a devout priestess, a victim of a terrible crime, who was then unjustly punished by the very goddess she served. It's a truly bizarre detail of the myth that Athena, goddess of wisdom, would react this way. Classicists and scholars often debate the meaning of this. Is it a cautionary tale about the dangers of beauty itself, suggesting it is an inherently corrupting force? Or is it tragic commentary on the powerlessness of women in a patriarchal world, where even a goddess will blame the female victim rather than confront the male aggressor? The myth is so potent because it supports both interpretations. It reflects a world where a woman's beauty was a liability, and her voice, even when crying for justice, was often ignored. And here's a niche bit of lore for you. There was just one Gorgon. Medusa had two sisters, Tess the Noan Uriel. They were born as immortal monsters, but Medusa was the only one who was mortal. Why? The myths don't give a clear reason, but it adds another layer of tragedy to her story. Her sisters were eternal horrors, but she was a human being condemned to a monstrous form, with her mortality intact. This meant she could be killed. Her curse was not just to be a monster, but to be a monster that a hero could one day hunt and slay. So now, you are Medusa. You are driven from the world of humans, an outcast living in a cave at the edge of the world. The snakes that were once your hair hiss and coil around your face. Your heart is filled with a grief and a rage so profound that it turns all who see it to stone. You are the ultimate victim, transformed into the ultimate villain. Your beauty didn't just bring you trouble or attract unwanted attention. In the end, it was the justification for your complete and utter dehumanization. You are no longer a person. You are a weapon, a trophy, a monster waiting for a hero. And that is perhaps the cruelest fate of all. You escape the fate of Medusa, shaking off that cold, stony horror from your mind, only to be reborn into an even more complicated and high-profile nightmare. Your name is now Helen. Yes, that Helen. Helen of Sparta, soon to be Helen of Troy. If Medusa's beauty led to her own personal destruction, yours is destined to bring ruin on a global scale. You are no longer just a target for the gods. You are an unwitting catalyst for a war that will define an entire age. From the moment you are born, your parentage is the stuff of legend. Your mother is Leda, the Queen of Sparta. Your father, well, that's complicated. The official story, the one whispered in hushed, reverent tones, is that he is Zeus, who visited your mother in the form of a swan. Leda, on the same night, was also with her mortal husband, King Tyndareus. The result was 4 children from 2 eggs, yes. Eggs. You and your brother Polydeuces, being children of Zeus, were immortal. Your sister killed and Demosthenes' brother Castor were mortal. The children of Tyndareus, right from birth. You are marked as semi-divine, a walking, talking diplomatic incident waiting to happen. Your beauty is beyond anything the world has ever seen. It's not just the perfect symmetry or the radiant features. It's an almost supernatural charisma, a glow that seems to emanate from you. It makes men lose their reason, long before you are of marriageable age. Your reputation has spread across the entire Hellenic world. Kings and princes hear tales of your stunning appearance and begin to dream. The danger starts early, when you are just a girl, barely a teenager. You are kidnapped. The hero Theseus, the legendary king of Athens and slayer of the Minotaur, abducts you, intending to keep you until you are old enough to marry. You are eventually rescued by your brothers, the divine winds Castor and Polydeuces, but the incident sets a terrifying precedent. Your life will be a series of abductions, of men deciding they have a right to possess you. You are not a person. You are the ultimate prize. When it is finally time for you to marry, the situation escalates into a full-blown crisis. Your stepfather, King Tyndareus, is terrified. Every eligible prince and chieftain from across Greece has gathered in Sparta, each demanding your hand. The guest list is a who's who of heroic legends. Odysseus, Ajax, Patroclus, Menelaus, and dozens more. Tyndareus knows that if he chooses one, the rest will likely unite and attack him out of sheer jealousy and disappointment. His court is filled with swaggering, heavily armed suitors, and the tension is thick enough to cut with a bronze sword. It's the wily Odysseus who comes up with a solution. In exchange for Tyndareus' help in securing his own marriage to Penelope, Odysseus offers a piece of advice. Before the decision is made, Tyndareus must make every single suitor swear a solemn oath. They must vow to accept his choice, and more importantly, to defend the chosen husband against anyone who would try to steal you away. It seems like a brilliant plan, a way to prevent the immediate outbreak of war. This is the infamous oath of Tyndareus. Everyone agrees, each man hoping he will be the one to benefit from the protection. Tyndareus chooses Menelaus, the wealthy and powerful prince of Mycenae and brother of Agamemnon. You are married to him. For a while, there is peace. You become the Queen of Sparta. You have a daughter, Hermione. It seems, for a fleeting moment, that you might escape your destiny. But you can't escape Aphrodite. You can't escape a promise made at a divine beauty contest. Dion, handsome prince from the far-off city of Troy, named Paris, arrives in Sparta on a diplomatic mission. He is charming, and he carries with him the favor of the goddess of lull, who promised him the most beautiful woman in the world. He looks at you, and he doesn't see a queen, a wife, or a mother. He sees his prize. Here is where the story gets murky, and historians have argued about it for millennia. Did Paris abduct you by force? Or did you, captivated by his youth and charm, and perhaps swayed by the will of Aphrodite, go with him willingly? The epic poems are ambiguous. Some portray you as a shameless adulteress, a face that launched 1,000 ships, who abandoned her family and betrayed her kingdom. Others paint you as a tragic, passive victim, a pawn in a game played by gods and men, carted off against your will. It's a strange tidbit that in some more obscure versions of the myth, you never even went to Troy. The 5th century historian Herodotus, often called the father of history, relates a version he heard from Egyptian priests. They claimed that the real Helen was whisked away by the gods and hidden in Egypt for the duration of the war. The Helen who went to Troy with Paris was a phantom, an eidolon, a ghost image created by the gods to fool the Greeks and the Trojans. The entire decade-long war, all the death and destruction, was fought over a beautiful illusion. This alternate version tries to absolve you, to make the war even more tragic and pointless. But in the main narrative, you are there, in Troy. When Menelaus discovers you are gone, he is enraged. He calls upon his brother Agamemnon, and together, they invoke the oath of Tyndareus. Every king and prince who once swore to protect your marriage is now honor-bound to sail for Troy and bring you back. An army is assembled. 1,000 ships are launched, and the Trojan War begins. You are now wrapped inside the high walls of Troy. The Trojans, for the most part, resent you. The old men on the battlements see you walk by and mutter that your beauty is divine. Yes, but not worth the price of their sons' lives. The Greeks, camped outside the walls, curse your name as they die in the dust. You are blamed by both sides. You have become the living symbol of the entire conflict. Your beauty, once a personal problem, is now the justification for mass slaughter. You are Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, and your name has become a synonym for disaster. To understand how you, as Helen, ended up in this impossible situation, we have to rewind. We have to leave the blood-soaked plains of Troy and travel back to a wedding party. Not your wedding, but a much earlier, more fateful one. This is the marriage of Peleus, a mortal king, and Thetis, a beautiful sea nymph. It's a huge affair. All the gods and goddesses are invited. Well, almost all of them, in a move that proves the gods are just as capable of petty social blunders as mortals. They forget to invite one key deity, Eris, the goddess of discord. Yes, they literally failed to invite strife to a party. You can imagine how well that went over. Eris is, understandably, insulted. But being the goddess of discord, she doesn't just send a passive-aggressive note. She decides to crash the party in the most disruptive way imaginable. She appears at the edge of the celebration, unseen, and rolls a solid gold apple into the midst of the goddesses. On the apple is inscribed a single word, Callisto. For the fairest, it's the mythological equivalent of throwing a lit firecracker into a munitions depot. Immediately, chaos erupts. Every goddess present believes the apple is meant for her. But soon, the field narrows down to 3 powerful contenders. Hera, the queen of the gods, wife of Zeus, and goddess of marriage and power. Athena, the fierce virgin goddess of wisdom and war. And Aphrodite, the enchanting goddess of love and beauty. The argument becomes heated. None of them will back down. The other gods, wisely, refuse to get involved. Picking a winner would mean making 2 powerful enemies for life. Zeus, finding himself in the uncomfortable position of judge. Does what any smart leader in a known situation does. He delegates. He declares that the matter must be settled by a mortal, someone who can offer an unbiased opinion. He chooses a young man named Paris. Now, Paris isn't just some random shepherd. He is, in fact, a prince of Troy, son of King Priam. But due to a prophecy that he would be the downfall of his city, he was abandoned on Mount Ida as an infant raised by shepherds, unaware of his royal lineage. H.E.S. handsome, but naive. H.E.S. just minding his own business, tending his flock, when the god Hermes suddenly appears, leading three of the most powerful and intimidating goddesses in existence. Hermes explains the situation and hands Paris the golden apple. You must decide, he says, which of these is the most beautiful. This is not a contest Paris can win. It's a trap. He is being asked to definitively state that 2 out of 3 of the most powerful beings in the cosmos are less beautiful than the third. It's an impossible, terrifying choice. The goddesses, however, are not above trying to sway the judge. They resort to bribery. Here goes first. She pulls him aside and offers him political power. Choose me, she whispers, and I will make you the king of all Europe and Asia. You will have unimaginable wealth and dominion over men. Then comes Athena. She appeals to his ambition. Choose me, she promises, and I will give you wisdom and make you the greatest warrior who has ever lived. You will have victory in every battle. Finally, it's Aphrodite's turn. She doesn't offer power or glory. She offers something far more primal and, for a young man like Paris, far more appealing. She leans in on, with a dazzling smile, makes her promise. Choose me, and I will give you the love of the most beautiful mortal woman in the world. This is the central, debated moment. Did Paris make a purely aesthetic choice, genuinely believing Aphrodite was the fairest? Or was he swayed by the bride? The myths imply the latter. He chose the promise of love over the promise of power or wisdom. He hands the golden apple to Aphrodite. In that moment, he secures her eternal gratitude and the undying, vengeful hatred of both Hera and Athena. This decision, made by a clueless shepherd prince on a remote mountainside, seals the fate of his city. Hera and Athena will now do everything in their power to ensure the complete and utter destruction of Troy, and the most beautiful mortal woman in the world. That's you, Helen of Sparta. Aphrodite never stopped to consider that you were already married, with a child, and that your hand was not hers to give away. The goddess of love, in her moment of triumph, promised an object she didn't own, setting in motion the very mechanism, the oath of Tyndareus, that would lead to the war. Here's a curious little detail about the golden apple of discord. There is no actual golden apple in the earliest texts. Like the Iliad, Homer alludes to the judgment of Paris but doesn't describe the apple itself. The detail of the golden apple with its inscription becomes popular in later some-reason retellings of the epic cycle. Some scholars suggest the story evolved to be more dramatic, more fairy tale minus light. The idea of a single, beautiful, cursed object is a powerful narrative device. So, your life as Helen, your abduction, and the subsequent decade of war are all collateral damage from a moment of divine vanity and a very poor decision made by a young man who was given an impossible task. You are living out the consequences of Aphrodite's victory. She got her golden apple, and in exchange, you were handed over as the prize, while Hera and Athena got their revenge by ensuring the war was as long and brutal as possible. You are not the cause of the war. You are simply the currency in a transaction between a foolish mortal and a vain goddess, and the price is being paid with the lives of thousands, while you, as Helen, are trapped in Troy, the epicenter of a war you unwillingly inspired. Let's shift our perspective to another woman within those same walls. Her fate is just as tragic, but in a completely different, more maddening way. Your name is now Cassandra. You are a princess of Troy, sister to the noble Hector and to Paris, the very man who brought this curse upon your city. And just like Helen, your tragedy also begins with your beauty, attracting the attention of a god. In your case, the god is Apollo, the radiant, golden god of music, poetry, prophecy, and the arts. He is, in many ways, the embodiment of Greek civilization and reason. But like all the gods, he is also capable of possessiveness and terrible cruelty when he doesn't get what he wants. He sees you, a princess of unparalleled beauty and intellect, and he desires you, unlike Zeus with his crude disguises. Apollo's approach is more refined, more tempting. He doesn't offer a shower of gold. He offers a gift worthy of his domain. He promises to give you the power of prophecy. He will open your mind to the divine, allowing you to see the future, to read the will of the gods in the patterns of birds and the whispers of the wind. It is an incredible, intoxicating offer, to know what is to come, to hold the keys to destiny itself. You, intrigued by the power and perhaps feeling you have little choice, agree to his terms. Apollo grants you the gift. He breathes the divine knowledge into you, and suddenly, your mind is flooded with images. You see flashes of the future, fragmented, unterrifying. You see ships with black sails. You see a great wooden horse. You see your city burning, your father murdered, your mother enslaved. The show, horrifying scope of Troy's doom is laid bare before your eyes. And then comes Apollo's price. He expects you to fulfill your end of the bargain. But you, horrified by the god's arrogance and perhaps by the terrible future you've just witnessed, refuse him. You turn him down. Apollo is stunned, then enraged. A mortal has dared to spurn him. He cannot take back the gift of prophecy, a divine gift. Once given, is irrevocable, but he can add a curse. A subtle, yet devastatingly effective one. He leans in close, and with a final, bitter act, he spits in your mouth. This act, symbolic and disgusting, does not strip you of your power. It corrupts it. From this moment on, you will continue to see the future with perfect, agonizing clarity, but no one will ever believe you. This is your curse. It is not to be blind to the future, but to be the only one who can see it, and to be utterly powerless to convince anyone else. It's a psychological torture of the highest order. Your beauty brought you a divine gift, and your rejection of the gods advanced twisted that gift into your own personal hell. You become the madwoman in the palace. You run through the halls of Troy, your hair wild, your eyes wide with the horror of what you know is coming. You grab your brother Hector's arm and beg him not to fight Achilles, because you've seen his body being dragged behind a chariot. He pats your head, calls you poor sister, and marches out to his death. You stand before the city elders when they are debating whether to bring the giant wooden horse inside the city gates. You scream. You cry. You tell them it is filled with Greek soldiers, that it will be their doom. You tell them, I fear the Greeks, even when they bear gifts. They listen. They shake their heads sadly, and they conclude that your grief and the stress of the war have finally broken your mind. They see your prophecy not as a warning, but as a symptom of female hysteria. They wheel the horse into the city. The historical debate around Cassandra is fascinating. Is her story a simple myth about a spurned god, or is it a deeper political allegory about the fate of the truth-teller in a time of crisis? Many scholars see Cassandra as a figure representing the ignored voice of reason or dissent. She is the one who speaks an inconvenient truth to power. But because the truth is too frightening or goes against the popular narrative, she is dismissed as crazy. Her tragedy is the tragedy of every whistleblower, every ignored expert, every person who sees disaster coming but is shouted down by willful ignorance and optimistic denial. And here's a weird little fact about prophets in ancient Greece. They had very specific, often unsavory, methods. They practiced everything from hippotomato, NCY reading the future, from animal livers to ornith omensai interpreting the flight patterns of birds. But one of the most famous sources of prophecy was the oracle at Delphi. The Pythia, who was a priestess of Apollo. She would sit on a tripod over a fissure in the earth, inhale the sweet-smelling vapors which modern geologists speculate might have been intoxicating gases like ethylene, and enter a trance state to deliver Apollo's cryptic pronouncements. It's a strange mix of the divine, the geological, and the potentially hallucinogenic. Yeah, Cassandra, don't need any of that. Your visions are clear, direct, and constant. It's a direct line to the truth, and it is utterly useless. Your curse follows you to the very end. You see the city fall, just as you predicted. You see your family slaughtered. In the chaos, you are taken as a war prize by Agamemnon, the king of the Greeks. As his ship sails back to Mycenae, you see his fate. Too, you see his wife, Clytemnestra, your old acquaintance Helen's mortal sister, waiting for him with a knife and a heart full of vengeance. When you arrive at his palace, you try to warn him. You prophesy your own death and his. Right there in the courtyard, the chorus of elders just thinks you are estranged, raving for an woman. No one listens, and moments later, you are both murdered. Your final, perfect prophecy is of your own death, and just like all the others, it comes true precisely because no one believed it. Your beauty started a chain reaction that gave you a superpower, only to make that power the source of your profound and unending agony. Let's step away from the grand, tragic destinies of princesses and queens. The burden of beauty wasn't just for the high-born. In fact, for a whole class of semi-divine beings, it was their defining characteristic and the source of their constant, low-grade anxiety. You are now a nymph. You aren't a goddess. Not really. You're a nature spirit, tied to a specific place. Maybe you're Aeneid, living in a freshwater spring, your laughter echoing in the gurgle of the stream. Or perhaps you're Dryad, your life force bound to a great oak tree, feeling its branches stretch like your own limbs. You could be an Ored, a nymph of the mountains, wild and reclusive. Whatever your domain, you share to keep traits with all your sisters. You are breathtakingly beautiful, and you are incredibly long-lived, but not truly immortal. Your life is, for the most part, idyllic. You spend your days in sun-dappled groves, weaving flowers into your hair, singing songs that only the trees and the animals can understand. You are the embodiment of the untamed, natural world, lovely, pure, and serene. And that's precisely the problem. You are a walking, talking temptation, living right on the edge of the civilized world. Your daily routine is frequently interrupted by unwanted visitors. A shepherd, stumbling upon your grove, will stop and stare, completely mesmerized. A hunter, tracking the deer, will forget his prey and start tracking you instead. These mortal encounters are usually manageable. You can melt back into your stream or your tree, leaving them to wonder if they just saw a dream. The real trouble comes from more powerful beings. The woods and hills are the playgrounds of the gods. Baal, the goat-footed god of the wild, with his mischievous eyes and his ever-present pipes, is a constant source of annoyance. He and his rowdy satyrs are always looking for nymphs to chase. Their pursuits are portrayed in art as playful, rustic romps. But for you, it's just stressful. It's like living in a world where you are perpetually being chased by a gang of rowdy fraternity brothers with godlike stamina. Then there are the gods themselves. Apollo, Hermes, Zeus, they all wander the natural world. And they all have a keen eye for beauty. If one of them spots you, the game changes. A chase by Pan is a nuisance. A pursuit by Apollo is a life-altering crisis. You know the story of Daphne, one of your sisters, a nymph who was so terrified of Apollo's advances that she prayed to her father, a river god, to save her. He did, by turning her into a laurel tree right as Apollo's hands reached her. It was an escape, but at the cost of her very being. She became a plant, her leaves destined to be worn as a victory crown by the very god she fled. This is your constant fear, that your desire for freedom will end with you becoming a tree, a reed, or a patch of flowers. Your beauty makes you a target, and your only defenses are to run or to be transformed into something else entirely. Here's a little-known category of nymphs that highlights how specific this all was. The Anipi. They were the nymphs of the clouds and rain. Zeus, in one of his most elaborate schemes to deceive Hera, created a cloud nymph, Anipi, in the exact image of his wife, in order to trick a mortal man named Ixion. It's a bizarre story, but it shows that even the clouds could have these beautiful, anthropomorphic spirits, and they too could be drawn into the messy dramas of Olympus. You could literally be a pretty face in a cumulonimbus, and you still wouldn't be safe. The philosophical question that nymphs pose is about the nature of the wild itself. The Greeks both revered and feared the wilderness. It was a place of purity and divine presence, but also of chaos and danger. You, as a nymph, embody this duality. You are the lovely, alluring face of nature, but you are also part of its untamable, unpredictable power. When a god chases you, it's not just a story about desire. It's an allegory for civilization's attempt to dominate and control the natural world. And just like in the real world, this attempt at domination often ends with the destruction or transformation of the very thing that was admired. Scholars debate whether the nymphs were seen as actual beings or as personifications of natural forces. Was a spring just a spring? Or did people truly believe a beautiful maiden lived within it? The evidence suggests it was a bit of both. They were part of a rich tapestry of folklore that blurred the lines between the physical and the metaphysical for the average person. Leaving a small offering at a spring was both a practical way to hope for clean water and a sign of respect for the spirit, the genius loci, that dwelled there. But for you, living inside this belief system, the implications are very real. You are a target for gods, a prize for mortals, and an object of desire for satyrs. Your existence is a paradox. You are a spirit of a place, but you are rarely left in peace in that place. Your beauty, which should be a simple expression of the natural world's splendor, becomes your greatest vulnerability. It's the scent of a flower that attracts the bee, but also the clumsy hand that plucks it from its stem. All you want is to be left alone in your sunlit grove, but your very nature makes you a beacon for trouble. And unlike a princess, you have no city walls to protect you, no army to call upon. Your only allies are the whispering reeds and the silent trees, and their only way to help is to make you one of them. Let's flip the coin. The dangers of being too beautiful weren't exclusively a female problem. The gods were equal opportunity admirers, and a handsome young man could find himself in just as much trouble as a lovely maiden. So, For this chapter, your name is Narcissus, and you are, without question, the most stunningly handsome young man who has ever lived. You are the son of a river god, Cepheus, and a nymph, Lirio, from birth. Your beauty is so extraordinary that your mother worries about it. She consults the blind seer, Tiresias, the same prophet who will much later encounter Oedipus. She asks him if her beautiful son will live a long life. Tiresias gives one of his famously cryptic answers. He will, if he never knows himself. It's a strange, unsettling prophecy that no one really understands at the time. You grow up to be proud, disdainful, and completely aware of the effect you have on others. Your path is littered with the broken hearts of both men and women, youths and nymphs, who fall hopelessly in love with you. You treat them all with cold contempt. You are an island of perfect, arrogant beauty, utterly indifferent to the passions you inspire. Your heart is a fortress, and you are its sole, content inhabitant. One of your most ardent admirers is a mountain nymph named Echo. Poor Echo has a tragic backstory of her own. She was a great talker, and used to distract Hera with endless chatter while Zeus was off having his usual affairs with the other nymphs. When Hera finally figured out the ruse, she cursed Echo. From then on, the nymph could not speak for herself, but could only repeat the last few words she heard someone else say. Echo, under this terrible curse, falls desperately in love with you. She follows you through the woods, her heart aching, unable to initiate a conversation. All she can do is wait for you to speak, and then use your own words to try and express her feelings. One day, you get separated from your hunting companions and call out, "Is anyone here?" Echo, hidden in the trees, joyfully replies, "Here." A confusing, tragic conversation ensues, with you calling out and her repeating your words, until she finally reveals herself, rushing to embrace you. You recoil in disgust. "Hands off. May I die before you have me," you shout, pushing her away. All she can whisper back in despair is, "Have me." Utterly rejected and humiliated, Echo flees. She spends the rest of her life fading away in lonely glens, until all that is left of her is her voice. Sad, disembodied Echo, we hear in mountains and empty rooms. But you have made one too many enemies. Your cruelty has not gone unnoticed by the gods. One of the many people you spurned, a young man named Aemenius, prays to the heavens for justice. He asks that you, Narcissus, might one day feel the pain of unrequited love yourself. Nemesis, the goddess of righteous retribution, hears his prayer and decides to act. She leads you, one hot afternoon, to a secluded, pristine pool of water in the forest. The pool is perfectly still, like a sheet of polished silver, untouched by shepherds, birds, or even falling leaves. Thirsty from the hunt, you lie down on the grassy bank to drink. As you lean over, you see a reflection in the water. It is the most beautiful face you have ever seen. You are instantly captivated, mesmerized, and filled with a desperate, all-consuming love. You see a youth with eyes like stars, hair worthy of Apollo, and a grace that is simply divine. You have no idea you are looking at yourself. You have, at last, known yourself, just as Tiresias predicted, and your doom is sealed. You are now glad. You try to kiss the beautiful lips, but they only meet the cold surface of the water. You try to embrace the lovely form, but it dissolves at your touch, only to reappear when the water stills. You speak to it. You plead with it. You weep before it. But the beautiful youth in the water can only mimic your expressions of sorrow. You are experiencing the exact same torment that you inflicted on Echo and all the others. A love that can never, ever be returned. This is where the term narcissism comes from. Of course, the myth is the archetypal story of self-obsession, but it's also a powerful tale about empathy. Your fatal flaw was just vanity. It was a complete inability to see the world from anyone's perspective but your own. Nemesis's punishment is poetically just. She forces you to become the object of your own obsessive, yet unattainable, desire. There's a small, perky debate among classicists about the role of the reflection. Some interpretations, particularly more modern ones, see the story as purely psychological, a man falling in love with his own image. But some scholars argue that for the ancient Greeks, a reflection in water was a much spookier thing. It was often seen as a glimpse into the underworld, a place where the souls of the dead resided. In this reading, you aren't just falling for your own image. You are falling in love with your own soul or a devil, an otherworldly being that lives in the water. This adds a layer of supernatural horror to your psychological obsession. You refuse to leave the pool. You forget to eat. You forget to drink. You forget to sleep. You just lie there, day after day, slowly wasting away. Your eyes locked on the beautiful, silent face in the water. Your body withers. Your strength fails. And finally, with one last, longing look at your own reflection, you die when the nymphs, who despite your cruelty still pitied you, come to retrieve your body for a funeral pyre. They cannot find it. In the place where you lay, a new flower has grown, a beautiful, golden-scented flower with white petals, which cranes its head over the water's edge. The narcissus, your beauty, which caused so much pain to others, ultimately only brought destruction upon yourself, trapping you in a fatal loop of self-admiration. Your journey as a handsome young mortal continues, but this time your problem isn't self-love. It's being loved too much by others, specifically by others who are far too powerful. You are now Adonis. Your beauty is so legendary, so perfect, that it transcends the mortal realm and sparks a bitter custody battle between two of the most formidable goddesses on Olympus. Your birth itself is a product of a tragic and cursed love. Your mother is Mare, a princess who was cursed by Aphrodite to fall in love with her own father. Deceiving him in the darkness, she consorted with him until he discovered her identity and, horrified, chased her with a sword. The gods took pity on her and transformed her into a myrrh tree. Months later, the bark of the tree cracked open, and you were born from the wood, a baby of almost painful beauty. Aphrodite, the very goddess who had cursed your mother, is the first to find you. She is so struck by your infant beauty that she decides to keep you for herself. But raising a baby on Olympus is complicated, so she does what any busy goddess would do. She outsources her childcare. She places you in a chest and entrusts you to Persephone, the queen of the underworld, for safekeeping. This is her first mistake. Persephone takes the chest down to her shadowy, silent kingdom. She opens it and finds you inside. As you grow from a beautiful baby into an impossibly handsome young man, Persephone, the grim queen of the dead, falls completely in love with you. When Aphrodite eventually comes down to the underworld to reclaim her prize, Persephone refuses to give you up. The two goddesses, one of love and light, the other of death and darkness, are now locked in a fierce dispute over you. You are the object of their affection, a living trophy being fought over by two cosmic forces. The argument becomes so intense that it threatens the balance of the heavens and the underworld. Finally, they are forced to take their case to the highest authority. Zeus. Zeus, wanting to avoid offending either goddess a rare moment of good judgment. Again delegates the decision. This time, he appoints the muse Calliope to arbitrate. Calliope hears both sides and comes up with a compromise that feels more like a modern-day shared custody agreement. She rules that you, Adonis, will spend 1/3 of the year with Persephone in the underworld, 1/3 of the year with Aphrodite on the mortal plane, and the final third of the year is yours to do with as you please. It's a bizarre arrangement, for months, you live in the gloomy, sunless realm of the dead with your somber guardian. For the next 4 months, you are on earth, the constant companion and lover of the goddess of beauty herself. And for the final 4 months, you are free. Of course, you, being completely smitten with the dazzling Aphrodite, choose to spend your free third of the year with her as well. This means you spend 8 months in the sun-drenched world of the living with Aphrodite, and only 4 in the dark with Persephone. Your life with Aphrodite is one of idyllic pleasure and thrilling hunts. You are both passionate hunters, but Aphrodite is constantly worried for you. She, the goddess of love, is plagued by a fear she cannot shake. She begs you not to hunt dangerous animals, lions, wolves, and especially boars. Be brave against the timid prey. She pleads, but against the bold, bravery is not safe. She is terrified of losing you. Here's a small, interesting tidbit. The cult of Adonis was a real and very popular religious phenomenon, particularly among women, in the ancient Greek world. It was an import from the Near East, likely from the Sumerian myth of Dumuzi and Inanna, or the Canaanite story of Baal and Astarte. Women would plant gardens of Adonis, small pots of fast-growing plants like lettuce and fennel. They would sprout quickly in the hot sun and then wither and die just as fast. These gardens symbolized your short, beautiful life and your tragic, premature death. The rituals were intensely emotional, with women first celebrating your love affair with Aphrodite and then loudly and publicly mourning your death. The central academic debate around your myth is whether it's primarily a story about love and loss, or if it's an agricultural allegory, your annual cycle emerging from the earth, living in the light, and returning to the underworld mirrors the cycle of vegetation in the Mediterranean. You are the seed that lies dormant underground in the winter with Persephone, sprouts in the spring, flourishes in the summer with Aphrodite, and is killed at harvest time. Your beautiful, tragic life is a personification of the seasons. Inevitably, Aphrodite's fears come true. One day, while hunting, your dogs flush out a monstrously large wild boar. Forgetting Aphrodite's warning, or perhaps driven by a young man's pride, you wound it with your spear. The enraged boar turns on you, goring you in the thigh with its massive tusks. You collapse, bleeding out onto the forest floor. Aphrodite, hearing your dying groans from hers, one-drawn chariot high above, rushes to your side. But she is too late. She cradles your lifeless body, her grief immense and inconceivable. In her sorrow, she decrees that your death will be commemorated every year. She sprinkles nectar on your blood, and from the crimson-stained earth, a new flower springs forth. The anemone, the windflower, beautiful and fragile. Its red petals, a permanent reminder of your fatal wound. Your beauty made you so desirable that you cowed and belonged to just one world. You were caught between life and death, love and gloom, a goddess of passion and a queen of silence. In the end, your mortal fragility couldn't withstand the intensity of the divine world you were pulled into. You were too beautiful to live a simple life, and too human to survive a godly one. Even when the love of a god is genuine, free from coercion or rivalry, your beauty can still place you in mortal danger. The problem is that the gods' social circles are just as filled with jealousy, pettiness, and drama as any high school cafeteria. You are about to learn this lesson in the most tragic way possible. You are Hyacinthus, a young Spartan prince, and your beauty is so radiant and your character so noble that you have captured the heart of a god. Epler. This isn't one of Zeus' predatory pursuits. This is portrayed as a story of genuine, mutual affection. Epler, the glorious god of light and reason, is utterly devoted to you. He forsakes his sacred duties to be by your side. He neglects his oracle at Delphi. His lyre gathers dust. His bow and arrows lie forgotten. His entire world now revolves around you. He joins you in all your mortal pastimes. He carries the hunting nets for you. He holds your dogs on a leash. He follows you through the rugged mountain trails of Sparta, his divine dignity completely set aside. You and Apollo are inseparable companions. You hunt together. You hike together. And you practice athletics together. For once, it seems that a mortal's beauty has brought not a curse, but a joyful and profound connection with the divine. It is a fragile, beautiful peace, and it is not destined to last. You have another admirer, a much less famous, but equally powerful one, Zephyros, the west wind. He is a gentle god, usually associated with the soft breezes of spring, but he too is captivated by your beauty, and he watches your happy companionship with Apollo with a growing, bitter jealousy. He sees you laughing with Apollo. He sees the god looking at you with pure adoration, and his heart fills with a cold, resentful wind. One bright, clear afternoon, you and Apollo decide to practice with the discus. You are in a field, taking turns throwing the heavy bronze disc, a classic test of strength and skill. Apollo, wanting to show off his divine power, hurls the discus with incredible force. It soars high into the air, a gleaming speck against the brilliant blue sky. You, excited and eager for your turn, run to the spot where you think the discus will land. This is your fatal mistake. Zephyros, the west wind, sees his chance. Hidden and unseen, he gathers his power. As the discus begins its descent, he blows a furious, targeted gust of wind. The gentle god of the breeze becomes a malevolent force. The wind catches the edge of the heavy bronze disc, altering its trajectory just enough. Instead of falling harmlessly to the ground, the discus veers sharply and strikes you directly on the head. You collapse without a sound. The bronze, once a symbol of athletic joy, becomes an instrument of death. Apollo rushes to your side, his face a mask of horror and disbelief. He, the god of healing and medicine, tries desperately to save you. He uses all his skill. He applies all his divine herbs. He whispers ancient charms to try and staunch the flow of blood. But the wound is too severe, even for a god. It is a mortal blow. He holds you as your life fades, your head lolling on his shoulder like a flower with a broken stem. Apollo's grief is immense, a storm of divine sorrow. He is filled with guilt and rage. He curses his own hands, his own strength that threw the discus. He wishes he could give you his own immortality, or die alongside you. This is a key point often debated by scholars, the nature of divine power and its limits. Why can't Apollo, a powerful god, simply bring you back to life? The myths are consistent on this point. While gods can transform mortals, heal many wounds, and are themselves immortal, they are generally powerless against a destiny that has been sealed by fate, especially when it comes to death itself. The fates, the Moira Eye, who spin, measure, and cut the thread of every life, hold a power that even Zeus respects. Your thread has been cut. Apollo can more. He can commemorate, but he cannot reverse. As a strange side note, the discus throw was a genuinely dangerous sport. The solos, the Greek term for the discus, was a heavy object, often made of stone or bronze, weighing anywhere from 1.25 to 6 kg, about 3 to 15 pounds. There are historical accounts of athletes being seriously injured or even killed by errant throws in crowded gymnasia. So, the myth, while fantastical, has a grimly realistic core. Apollo, unable to save you, decides you will live on forever in his memory and in the world. He will not allow you to descend to the drab eternity of the underworld. As your blood soaks into the earth, he causes a new flower to grow from the soil. This is the hyacinth. It is a beautiful, fragrant flower, but on its petals, Apollo inscribed his grief. The ancient Greeks believed they could see the letters AI. AI on the flower's petals, which in Greek is a cry of sorrow, like alas. Alas, your story is a heartbreaking reminder that even the purest love from a god offers no protection from the machinations of others. Your beauty did not attract a predator, but it did attract a rival. You became the unwitting focal point of a divine love triangle, and you paid the ultimate price for a jealousy that washed even your own. You were not the target of the violence, but its collateral damage. Your only crime was being so beautiful that a god loved you, and another god couldn't bear to see it. We've seen how your beauty could get you into trouble with gods, nymphs, and jealous winds. Now, let's bring it down to earth, into the dusty streets and political arenas of the Greek city-state. The polis. Here, your beauty as a young man doesn't just attract divine attention. It entangles you in a complex and highly ritualized social system that is deeply intertwined with politics, education, and power. Welcome to the world of paideristia. This is a topic that can be uncomfortable and confusing for modern sensibilities, but it was a recognized part of the social fabric in many ancient Greek cities, especially Athens. It was a formal relationship between an older man, the aristes lover, and an adolescent boy, the Eromenos beloved. Ero, being a beautiful youth on the cusp of manhood, are now an ideal Eromenos. This was just about physical attraction, at least not in theory. The idealized version of this relationship, the one philosophers like Plato wrote about, was primarily educational and mentoring. The aristes, a mature, experienced citizen, was meant to take you under his wing. He would guide your intellectual and moral development, teach you about politics, philosophy, and virtue. He was supposed to be your role model, helping you transition from a boy into a full-fledged, responsible male citizen. Your beauty was seen as the outward sign of your inner potential for excellence. You experienced this firsthand in the gymnasium. This isn't just a place for exercise. It's the social hub for the male elite. Here, you train in wrestling, running, and the discus, usually in the nude, and you are constantly being watched. The older men of the city gather here to talk politics, conduct business, and scout for promising youth. Your physical grace, your athletic prowess, and your handsome features make you a prime candidate for mentorship. An older man, a respected war hero, or a prominent politician might approach you. He won't be crude. The courtship was highly ritualized. He might praise your skill, offer you advice on your wrestling technique, or engage you in a philosophical discussion. He is, in essence, applying for the position of your mentor. The choice is yours, at least in principle. You are expected to be modest and reserved, not to give in too easily. To do so would be seen as promiscuous. You are supposed to choose an aristes who is virtuous and wise, someone who can genuinely help you become a better man. This is the ideal. The reality, as you can imagine, was often much messier. The line between mentorship and exploitation could be incredibly thin. The system was predicated on a significant power imbalance. While the relationship was supposed to be about mutual respect, it was often driven by the older man's desire and the younger man's ambition. A powerful mentor could offer you significant social and political advantages, helping to launch your career in public life. Your beauty became your primary currency in this marketplace of advancement. Here's a quirky detail that illustrates the formalized nature of this. The gift giving. It was considered vulgar for the heiress to offer money. Instead, the approved gifts were often symbolic. A common gift was a rooster. Why a rooster? Scholars still puzzle over this. Roosters are feisty, courageous, and real, lusty. The gift might have symbolized the fighting spirit the heiress hoped to instill in you. Or it might have been a more direct, if slightly comical, symbol of his amorous intentions. It's a strange, almost surreal part of the courtship ritual. You might come home from the gymnasium with a new rooster, and your family would understand it as a sign that a prominent citizen was courting you. The whole system is a minefield of social and political risk. If you associate with a man of poor character, your own reputation suffers. If your mentor falls out of political favor, you could be dragged down with him. The relationship could also spark intense jealousies and rivalries. Two powerful men might compete for your favor, and you would be caught in the middle of their political feud. The most famous historical controversy surrounds whether these relationships were physical. The philosopher Plato, in his dialogues like the Symposium and Phaedrus, argues for a purely platonic love, where the older man's admiration for the boy's physical beauty is sublimated into a higher, intellectual connection. He saw physical consummation as a distraction from the true purpose of the relationship, which was the pursuit of wisdom. However, other sources, like vase paintings and comedic plays, suggest that physical intimacy was often a reality. This remains a major point of contention among historians. Was platonic love an achievable ideal that some strived for? Or was it a philosophical fantasy designed to put a respectable face on a practice that was often far from noble? You are navigating this world, where your face and physique are your letter of introduction. Your beauty opens doors, but every doorway leads to a new set of risks. It makes you a person of interest, a potential protege for the powerful, but it also makes you a pawn in their games. You learn to be cautious, to read the intentions behind the praise, to understand that a compliment about your form might also be a political overture. In the hyper-competitive, deeply personal world of Athenian politics, being a beautiful young man wasn't just a matter of being admired. It was a matter of being absorbed into the city's complex web of power, ambition, and desire. You are now the living embodiment of the opportunities and perils we just discussed. Your name is Alcibiades. You are a real historical figure, an Athenian statesman and general who lived during the tumultuous Peloponnesian War. And you are, by all contemporary accounts, dazzlingly, impossibly charismatic and handsome. You are the rock star of 5th century Athens. You have it all. You are born into one of the city's most aristocratic families. You are incredibly wealthy. You are sharp, witty, and a brilliant public speaker. And on top of all that, you are blessed with a physical beauty that makes heads turn wherever you go. The historian Plutarch, writing centuries later, said you were handsome as a boy, as a youth, and as a man. Your beauty gracefully adapting to every stage of your life. Even a slight lisp you had was considered charming and endearing rather than a flaw. You are the ultimate tyromenos, the most powerful men in Athens, including Pericles, your guardian, and even the philosopher Socrates, are captivated by you. Socrates, in particular, sees your immense potential for both good and evil. He is drawn to you not just by your beauty, but by a desperate desire to guide your brilliant, ambitious, and dangerously unpredictable soul toward virtue. Your relationship with Socrates becomes one of the most famous in all of antiquity, the philosopher chasing after the beautiful, wayward youth, trying to save him from himself. But you are not a passive, modest beloved. You are fully aware of your power, and you revel in it. You are arrogant, flamboyant, and you delight in shocking the conservative sensibilities of Athenian society. You once owned a dog, a huge, magnificent animal that cost a fortune, and you cut off its beautiful tail when your friends were horrified and told you that all of Athens was talking about it. You just laughed and said, "Excellent. I'd rather they talk about my dog's tail than about something worse I might have done." This is your personality in a nutshell. A calculated, attention-seeking defiance of convention. Your beauty and charisma make you a political sensation. When you decide to enter public life, you rise with astonishing speed. The people of Athens are mesmerized by you. They see your aristocratic glamour. They hear your persuasive speeches, and they are willing to follow you anywhere. You become a leading voice for the aggressive, expansionist faction in Athens, pushing for bold and risky military ventures. This is where your beauty becomes a double-edged sword. The very same charisma that makes you popular also makes you deeply suspect. In a democracy that was profoundly paranoid about the rise of potential tyrants, your overwhelming popularity is seen as a threat. People wonder, does he love Athens? Or does he love the idea of Alcibiades ruling Athens? Your aristocratic lifestyle, your lavish spending, and your legions of admirers all seem profoundly undemocratic. Your personal magnetism is so great that it feels like a danger to the state itself. The breaking point comes in 415 BCE. You are the chief proponent of the Sicilian expedition, a massive and incredibly risky naval campaign against the city of Syracuse. It is your brainchild, your path to immortal glory. But on the eve of the fleet's departure, a great scandal rocks Athens. Overnight, a number of whom, stone pillars with the head of the god Hermes and Diphalus, which were thought to ward off evil and were placed at doorways and crossroads throughout the city, are mutilated. It's a shocking act of sacrilege and a terrible omen. Panic grips the city. Who would do such a thing? Your political enemies seize the opportunity. They accuse you and your rowdy, aristocratic friends of being responsible. They also accuse you of a separate act of impiety, profaning the Eleusinian mysteries, one of Greece's most sacred religious rituals, by performing a parody of them at a private drinking party. Whether you were actually guilty is one of the great unsolved mysteries of ancient history. Historians have debated it for centuries. Were you a decadent nihilist capable of such an act? Or were you the victim of a sophisticated political smear campaign designed to eliminate you right before your moment of triumph? The evidence is purely circumstantial, but because of your reputation for arrogance and a licentious lifestyle, the charges stick. Your personal brand, which was once your greatest asset, now becomes the primary evidence against you. You are allowed to set sail with the fleet for Sicily, but the unease in Athens grows. Your enemies work the populace into a frenzy, and the city officially recalls you to stand trial for your life. You know you won't get a fair hearing. So, instead of returning to Athens, you defect. You jump ship and flee to, of all places, Sparta, Athens' mortal enemy. This is the ultimate betrayal, and it is driven entirely by your sense of self-preservation and wounded pride. You give the Spartans expert advice on how to defeat your own city, contributing directly to the catastrophic failure of the Sicilian expedition, which you yourself had championed. Your story is the ultimate cautionary tale of beauty and charisma in politics. You were the golden boy of Athens, a man whose physical and personal charm could bend the will of the city. But that same charm made you an object of intense suspicion. It created a perception of you as being above the law, an exceptional individual who could not be trusted within a system of equals. Your beauty didn't curse you with a monster's for more a tragic death by discus. It cursed you with a level of public adoration so intense that it inevitably curdled into fear and accusation, ultimately leading you to betray everything you once stood for. You were too bright for Athens to bear. Let's return to the world of women, but leave the palaces of queens and the groves of nymphs behind. We're moving into the sophisticated, smoky, and intellectually vibrant world of the Athenian Symposium, the all-male drinking party, and you are the only woman officially allowed to be there. You are a hetaira. The word hetaira literally translates to female companion. But this simple translation doesn't even begin to capture your complex role in society. You are not a wife. Wives, in Athenian society, were expected to be modest, secluded, and largely uneducated. Their role confined to managing the household and producing legitimate heirs. You are also not a common street prostitute. You are something entirely different, a unique and precarious social class. Your primary asset, the one that gets you in the door, is your beauty. You are expected to be physically stunning, graceful, and alluring. But unlike for most other women in Greek society, your beauty is just the beginning. It's the prerequisite. Your real value lies in your mind. You are highly educated, often more so than the men you entertain. You are trained in music, especially the aulos, a double pipe instrument, dance, and poetry. More importantly, you are a brilliant conversationalist. You can hold your own in a philosophical debate with Socrates, discuss politics with a general, or trade witty banter with a playwright. At the symposium, while the men recline on their couches, drinking wine mixed with water from a central crater, you are both entertainment and participant. You might play a song, recite a poem, or perform a dance. But you also listen. You interject. You challenge ideas. You are the intellectual grease that keeps the wheels of the party turning. You are, in a sense, a professional muse, a living embodiment of art and intelligence. This is a high-risk, high-reward profession. On one hand, you have a level of freedom and intellectual engagement that is unthinkable for a respectable Athenian wife. You control your own finances. You can engage with the most brilliant minds of your age. The most famous and successful hetaira became celebrities, accumulating great wealth and influence. Aspasia of Miletus, for example, was the partner of the great statesman Pericles. She was so renowned for her intellect and rhetorical skill that Plato himself mentioned her in his writings, and some even claimed she wrote Pericles' famous speeches for him. On the other hand, your position is incredibly precarious. You have no legal standing. You are not a citizen. You are entirely dependent on the favor of powerful men. Your career is tied to your youth and beauty, which are fleeting, and despite your sophistication, you are always walking a fine line, viewed with a mixture of admiration and contempt. To many, you are still just a prostitute with a fancy vocabulary. Your beauty is both your greatest weapon and your most dangerous liability. It allows you to captivate powerful men, securing your livelihood and position. But it also provokes intense jealousy, not just from the wives of your patrons, but also from rival heterai and from men you might reject. Your livelihood depends on being desirable, but being too desirable can lead to obsessive patrons, public scandal, and accusations. Here's a quirky detail about the symposium you might attend. They played a game called Carte Basse. After finishing a cup of wine, a guest would deftly fling the dregs from the bottom of his shallow cup, the kilix, at a target across the room, usually a small bronze dish balanced on a stand. As he threw the dregs, he would say the name of the person he loved. If he hit the target, it was a sign that his love would be returned. You, as a hetaira, would often be the object of these wind-reg declarations of love, a centerpiece in their drunken games of desire. The debate among historians about the hetaira is centered on their agency. Were they proto-feminist figures, cleverly carving out a space for female intellect and independence in a deeply patriarchal society? Or were they just a more refined class of exploited women, their freedom merely a gilded cage designed for the pleasure of the male elite? The truth, as is often the case, is likely somewhere in the middle. They were women who used the limited tools available to them, their beauty and their wits, to navigate a world that offered them few good options. Some, like Aspasia, achieved remarkable success and respect. Many others likely ended their careers in poverty and obscurity once their looks faded. You live in this world of intellectual fireworks and social quicksand. One evening, you might be discussing the nature of justice with a philosopher. The next, you might be fending off the drunken advances of a politician. You must be charming but not cheap, intelligent but not intimidating, beautiful but not just an object. Your entire existence is a carefully calibrated performance. Your beauty bought you a ticket to the most exclusive show in town, but it also means you can be kicked out at any moment, for any reason. You are one of the most liberated women in Athens, and also one of the most vulnerable. You are living the precarious life of a hetaira, and now you find yourself in the ultimate crisis. Your success and your stunning beauty have not just earned you admirers, they have earned you powerful enemies. You are now Phryne, one of the most famous and beautiful hetairae of the 4th century BC, and you are on trial for your life. Your real name isn't Phryne. That's a nickname meaning toad, supposedly given to you because of a yellowish complexion, though it's more likely an ironic joke given your legendary beauty. You were born in a small town in Boeotia but came to Athens to make your fortune, and you succeeded spectacularly. You became incredibly wealthy, a muse to artists and a companion to powerful men. The great sculptor Praxiteles used you as the model for his revolutionary statue. The Aphrodite of Knidos, the first major cult statue of a goddess to be depicted completely nude. The painter Apelles was inspired to paint his masterpiece, Aphrodite in Adion, the Aphrodite rising from the sea, after seeing you swimming naked in the ocean at Eleusis. You are not just beautiful. You are the living standard of beauty, the face and form of the goddess of love herself. This level of fame is dangerous. An unsuccessful lover named Deuetheus, a man you rejected, decides to take his revenge. He brings a capital charge against you. Impatiae sdbia. This is the same vague, deadly charge that was used to condemn Socrates. The specific accusation is that you have profaned the Eleusinian mysteries, the same accusation leveled against Alcibiades. It's a serious, terrifying charge, and in the politically charged atmosphere of Athens, it often leads to a death sentence. You are brought before the Areopagus, the High Court of Athens, a jury of hundreds of male citizens who will decide your fate. Your prosecutor, Eutheos, gives a fiery speech. He paints you as a corrupting influence, a woman whose decadent lifestyle and blasphemous behavior threaten the moral and religious foundations of the city. He uses your wealth, your influence, and your association with artists who depict you as a goddess as evidence of your hubris. Your beauty, he argues, is a tool you use to mock the gods and manipulate men. You have a defender, a skilled orator named Hyperides, who is also one of your lovers. He gives a brilliant speech in your defense, arguing that the charges are baseless, born of a personal grudge. He appeals to the jury's reason. He points out the lack of evidence, but it doesn't seem to be working. The mood of the jury is hostile. They are swayed by Euthias' puritanical rhetoric. They see you, a beautiful, wealthy, and independent for a woman, and their envy and suspicion are palpable. You can feel the verdict turning against you. What happens next is one of the most famous and theatrical moments in the history of law. Hyperides, seeing that his words are failing, resorts to a desperate, last-ditch strategy. He walks over to you, and in a single, dramatic motion, he rips open your tunic, baring your breasts to the entire court. The courtroom is stunned into silence. The jury, a sea of stern, judgmental faces, is suddenly confronted not with an abstract argument, but with the very beauty they have heard so much about. They are looking at the body that inspired the most famous statue of Aphrodite in the world. Hyperides then makes his final, audacious appeal. He doesn't argue law or evidence. He argues theology. He tells the jury, "Can you bring yourselves to condemn a priestess and votary of Aphrodite?" He suggests that to destroy such a perfect specimen of female beauty would be an offense against the gods themselves. He implies that your beauty is not a sign of your corruption, but a sign of divine favor. You are not a criminal. You are a living work of art, a reflection of the goddess. To kill you would be a form of sacrilege. This moment is a huge point of contention for historians. Did it really happen this way? The story comes to us from later writers, and it has all the hallmarks of a dramatic embellishment. Some scholars believe it's a fabrication, a piece of rhetorical fiction designed to illustrate the power of beauty. Others argue that it is plausible, a desperate act of courtroom theatrics in a legal system that was often swayed by emotion and spectacle as much as by logic. They point out that this was not a modern court of law, but a public, democratic assembly, susceptible to dramatic appeals. A strange but relevant legal concept in Athens was edemia, the loss of citizen rights. It could be imposed for various offenses, while you, as a foreign woman, had no citizen rights to lose. The charge of EBIA was so severe, it could lead to execution and the confiscation of property. The stakes were absolute. This wasn't about a fine or a short prison sentence. It was about life and death. The jury is moved, not by logic, but by what the ancient Greeks called a superstitious dread. They are overcome with a mixture of awe and fear. They look at you, and they see not a blasphemer, but a vessel of the divine. They acquit you. You walk out of the court a free woman. Your trial becomes a legend. It is a story about the power of beauty to transcend justice, to literally disarm the law. But it's a terrifying victory. You won, not because you were proven innocent, but because your body was deemed too beautiful to destroy. Your defense rested not on your character or your actions, but on the aesthetic and religious reaction you provoked in a crowd of men. Your beauty, which had put you in mortal danger, became your only and ultimate defense. It saved your life, but it also reinforced the very thing you were accused of, that you were a woman whose power resided not in her mind or her rights, but in the spectacle of her physical form. Your trial as Phryne revealed a deep-seated belief in the Athenian psyche. the idea that what is beautiful must also be good. This wasn't just a casual assumption. It was a formal philosophical and social concept known as kalokagathia. And you are about to discover how this seemingly positive idea can be just as dangerous and misleading as the fear of beauty. The word kalokagathia is a portmanteau, a combination of two adjectives. The first is kalos, which means beautiful. But kalos is a much broader term than our English word. It doesn't just mean physically attractive. It can also mean noble, excellent, fine, or well-made. The second word is agathos, which means good. And again, good here isn't just about moral virtue. It can also mean brave, capable, or belonging to a high social status. So, kalokagathia is the ideal of being beautiful and good, the perfect harmony of outward appearance and inner worth. In theory, this sounds wonderful. It's the belief that a handsome physique is a reflection of a noble soul. A graceful bearing indicates a virtuous character. The ideal citizen, the perfect gentleman warrior of the aristocracy, was expected to embody kalokagathia. He was supposed to be both an accomplished athlete with a beautiful body and an upstanding, morally sound leader. The two qualities were seen as inextricably linked, two sides of the same coin. You see this idea everywhere. It's in the way people talk about heroes. It's in the way they admire athletes. When they see a young man with a perfectly proportioned body, they don't just think, "He is handsome." They say, "He must be brave. He must be from a good family. He must have a good character." It's a system of instant judgment based entirely on aesthetics. But you quickly learn how flawed and dangerous this logic is. Think back to Alcibiades. He was the poster boy for kalokagathia. He was stunningly beautiful, and everyone assumed his character must be equally noble. This assumption gave him incredible political leeway. People were willing to overlook his arrogance and his reckless behavior precisely because he looked the part of the ideal citizen. His beauty acted as a shield, deflecting criticism and masking his deeply flawed character. At least for a while. His story is a powerful testament to the failure of the kalos-agathos equation. The opposite is also true. If you are not beautiful, the system assumes you are not good. If you are physically plain or deformed, it is seen as an outward sign of a flawed or ignoble inner character. This creates a powerful prejudice against anyone who doesn't fit the narrow, sculptural ideal of beauty. A weird, niche manifestation of this can be found in the Greek perception of some foreign peoples. For example, the Greeks often described the Egyptians in their art and literature in ways that deviated from their own beauty standards. This physical otherness was sometimes used to imply a moral or cultural inferiority. By presenting others as less kalos, they could more easily justify seeing them as less agathos. It's an early and insidious form of aesthetic prejudice being used to reinforce in us versus them mentality. The core academic debate here is whether kalokagathia was a genuine, widely held belief or if it was primarily an aristocratic propaganda tool. Some scholars argue that it was a sincere philosophical ideal, an attempt to create a holistic vision of human excellence. Others contend that it was a convenient ideology for the ruling class. Since the aristocracy had the leisure time for athletic training in the gymnasium and better nutrition, they were more likely to be physically fit and beautiful. By linking this physical superiority to an innate moral superiority, they could create a self-perpetuating justification for their elite status. We look better. Therefore we are better. Therefore we deserve to rule. This puts you in a strange position. If you are beautiful, you are given the benefit of the doubt in almost every situation. People assume you are good, trustworthy, and capable, even if you've done nothing to earn that trust. This can be a huge advantage. but it's also a form of pressure. You are expected to live up to an ideal that you may not possess. And if your actions eventually reveal that your inner character doesn't match your beautiful exterior, the backlash can be severe. The disappointment is greater because the initial assumption was so high. Conversely, if you happen to be born playing, you are fighting an uphill battle your entire life. You have to work twice as hard to prove your worth. To convince people that your lack of physical beauty does not mean you lack courage, intelligence, or virtue. The system is rigged from the start, using aesthetics as a shortcut to moral judgment. So you live in a world where your face is your resume. Your physique is your character reference. The belief that beauty and goodness are a package deal creates a society full of unfair advantages and unearned stigmas. It allows charismatic but dangerous men like Alcibiades to rise, and it marginalizes good people who don't happen to look like a statue. It's a beautiful idea on the surface, but in practice, it's a lazy and often cruel way to judge your fellow human beings. You learn that a beautiful face can hide the ugliest of souls, and that true goodness often resides in the plainest of vessels. The grand theory of Kailokaga needed a major challenger, a walking, talking paradox to prove that the link between outer beauty and inner goodness was not just flawed, but often completely backward. That challenge came in the form of one of the most influential and strangest-looking men in Athens. You are now a student and follower of Socrates. By all accounts, Socrates was, to put it mildly, physically unattractive. His contemporaries and students, even those who adored him, were remarkably consistent in their descriptions. Plato and Xenophon describe him as having bulging, crab-like eyes, a snub nose that was wide and flat with upturned nostrils, and thick, fleshy lips. He was short, paunchy, and had a rolly, duck-like walk. He looked, by some accounts, more like a Silenois or a sadder one of those wild, mischievous, and often drunk woodland creatures than a respectable Athenian citizen. In a city that idolized the sculpted male physique, Socrates was the antithesis of the physical ideal. If the theory of Kailokaga held true, a man who looked like this should have a base, vulgar, and ignorant soul. He should be the opposite of the ideal citizen. Yet, this physically ugly man possessed one of the most brilliant, virtuous, and courageous minds Greece would ever produce. This is the great Socratic paradox. You follow him through the agora, the marketplace of Athens, which he used as his personal classroom. He doesn't have a school or charge any fees. He just talks to people, merchants, politicians, artisans, young aristocrats like you. And he asks questions. Simple, yet deeply unsettling questions. He'll approach a famous general and ask, "What is courage?" He'll ask a politician, "What is justice?" The people he questions are usually confident in their answers at first, but through his relentless, logical probing a method we now call the Socratic method, he quickly demonstrates that their confident beliefs are often built on a foundation of unexamined prejudice and contradiction. He doesn't claim to have the answers himself. He famously claims that the only thing he knows is that he knows nothing. His mission is simply to expose the ignorance of others, and in doing so, to spur them toward a more genuine pursuit of knowledge. His ugliness becomes central to his philosophical identity. It serves as a powerful, constant visual argument against the superficial values of his society. His appearance is a form of philosophical street theater. He is a living demonstration that one should not judge a book by its cover, or a man by his resemblance to a statue of Apollo. Plato, in his Symposia, has Alcibiades give a famous speech comparing Socrates to a Silenus statue. These work almond figurines, often sold in shops, that were shaped like ugly satyrs on the outside. But they were hollow, and when you opened them up, you would find a beautiful, tiny statue of a god hidden inside. This, Alcibiades says, is Socrates. On the outside, he is this ugly, comical figure. But if you open him up, if you listen to his words and get to the core of his arguments, you will find images of divine virtue and wisdom within. This is a revolutionary idea. It completely inverts the concept of kalos. Socrates and his followers propose a new kind of beauty, the beauty of the soul. They argue that true kalos is not about the symmetry of your face, but about the harmony of your mind. True agathos is not about your social standing, but about your commitment to justice and truth. This inner beauty is far more valuable and enduring than the fleeting beauty of the body. Of course, not everyone in Athens is charmed by this ugly man and his probing questions. In fact, many people find him intensely annoying. He wanders around the city, publicly humiliating powerful and respected men by revealing their ignorance. He is seen by many as a sociopath, a gadfly, as he calls himself, sent by the gods to sting the lazy horse of the Athenian state into action. Here's a quirky historical detail. Socrates, as profession, before he dedicated himself to philosophy, was a stonemason and sculptor, just like his father. There's a deep irony in this. The man who would spend his life arguing against the worship of physical form may have started his career by creating it. Some scholars speculate that this early experience might have given him a unique, first-hand perspective on the difference between a beautiful objective statue and a beautiful soul, fueling his later philosophical mission. This historical claim is, however, debated, with some seeing it as a later invention to add another layer to his story. Eventually, Socrates, as constant questioning and his influence on the youth of Athens, like the controversial Alcibiades and Critias, who became a tyrant, make him too many enemies. In 399 BCE, he is put on trial, charged with impiety and corrupting the youth. Unlike Freud, he makes no dramatic, emotional appeals. He offers a rigorous, logical defense of his life and his philosophical mission. He refuses to beg or propose a reasonable punishment, instead suggesting, with his characteristic irony, that the city should reward him with free meals for life for his service to the state. The jury, angered by his defiance, convicts him and sentences him to death. He accepts the verdict calmly, without fear, arguing that a true philosopher should not fear death, as it is either a dreamless sleep or a journey to a better place where he can continue his questioning. In his death, Socrates becomes the ultimate martyr for philosophy, and his physical ugliness becomes a permanent part of his legend. It serves as a powerful, enduring symbol of the triumph of inner worth over outer appearance, a direct and lasting refutation of the superficial logic of kalos. He proved that the most beautiful soul in Athens could be found in its ugliest man. Socrates may have lived and died as a challenge to the supremacy of physical beauty, but it was his most brilliant student who would try to build a complete philosophical system to contain and explain it. Let's sit in on a lecture from the man himself. You are now a student at the academy in Athens, and your teacher is Plato. Plato, unlike his mentor Socrates, was an aristocrat who came from a wealthy and powerful family. He was also, by most accounts, quite handsome and a skilled wrestler in his youth. The name Plato was likely a nickname meaning broad, perhaps referring to his shoulders. He saw the danger of beauty. He had witnessed firsthand how it contributed to the chaos surrounding his friend Alcibiades, and how Socrates' lack of it led to prejudice. His goal was to create a philosophy that could appreciate beauty without being dangerously seduced by it. His solution was to create a hierarchy. For Plato, the physical world that we perceive with our senses is not the real world. It's a world of shadows, a pale, imperfect imitation of a higher, more real world, the world of forms. This is his famous theory of forms. In this higher, eternal, and unchanging reality, there exists a perfect, ideal form of everything. There is a form of a chair, a form of a tree, a form of justice, and, most importantly for our discussion, a perfect, absolute form of beauty itself. So, when you see a beautiful person, a beautiful sunset, or a beautiful vase, what you are actually seeing, according to Plato, is not beauty itself. You are just seeing the dim, fleeting reflection of the true, eternal form of beauty. The beautiful person is beautiful only because they participate in or imitate this higher form. This is a brilliant philosophical move. It allows him to acknowledge the power of physical beauty while simultaneously demoting it. HES, essentially saying, yes, that person is beautiful, and that's lovely, but don't get too excited. What you're seeing is just a faint echo of the real thing. It's a stepping stone, not the destination. He outlines this idea in the symposium. In a speech given by a wise woman named Diotima, as recounted by Socrates, she describes a ladder of love or ascent of beauty. A person, she explains, begins by loving one beautiful body. But a true philosopher should then realize that the beauty in this one body is related to the beauty in all other bodies. So, he moves up the ladder to appreciate the beauty of all physical forms. Then, he should realize that the beauty of the soul Kalokagathia done right is far superior to the beauty of the body. So he ascends again, to love beautiful minds and virtuous characters. From there, he climbs higher, to appreciate the beauty of laws, institutions, and ideas. Finally, after a long and difficult intellectual journey, he may reach the top of the ladder and grasp, in a flash of understanding, the form of beauty itself pure, eternal, and absolute. This is Plato's grand solution. He takes the dangerous, intoxicating power of physical attraction and transforms it into a philosophical fuel. The love of a beautiful person becomes the very first step on the path to enlightenment. It's a way to domesticate desire, to channel its energy toward a higher, purely intellectual goal. Now, let's wander over to the Listen, the rival school run by Plato's own star pupil, Aristotle. Aristotle has a much more down-to-earth, practical approach. He's not that interested in a separate world of forms. HES, a biologist, a logician, a man who wants to understand the world as it is. For Aristotle, beauty isn't a reflection of some higher, mystical reality. It's a property of the object itself. In his works like the Poetics and Rhetoric, he defines beauty in terms of order taxis, symmetry symmetria, and definites or clarity HORs menon. He believes beauty is found in things that are well proportioned and, crucially, of a manageable size. A creature can't be beautiful if it's so big you can't see it all at once, or so small you can't see its structure clearly. It's a very analytical, almost scientific approach to aesthetics. Beauty is a result of observable, harmonious design. One strange little tidbit from Aristotle's writings on biology reveals his empirical, and sometimes biased, view when discussing human generation. He posited that the man provided the form and the source of movement for a child, while the woman provided only the material substance. This hierarchical view of reproduction subtly reinforced the cultural idea of the male as the active, formative principle and the female as the passive material, a notion that had deep implications or how male and female beauty and roles were perceived. The big debate between Plato and Aristotle on this topic, which continues to echo in philosophy today, is this: is beauty a transcendent, otherworldly ideal that we faintly perceive Plato, or is it an immanent quality, a feature of the pleasing mathematical and structural properties of the objects we see in this world? Aristotle. Plato gives you a way to escape the tyranny of physical beauty by telling you it's just a shadow of something better. Aristotle gives you a way to understand it by breaking it down into its component parts, like a scientist dissecting a specimen. Both philosophers are trying to do the same thing, to wrestle with the overwhelming, often irrational power of beauty and bring it under the control of reason. They are attempting to build intellectual floodgates to manage the dangerous river of desire that flows through human society. A river that they both knew could easily overflow its banks and cause immense destruction. Their philosophies provide a toolkit for admiring beauty without becoming its slave, while the philosophers were busy trying to rationalize beauty. The average person on the street had a much more directed, magical approach. If you couldn't be beautiful through the luck of genetics or the favor of the gods, maybe you could get there through a little help from the supernatural. And if someone else's beauty was causing you problems, you could try to take it away. You are now stepping into the shadowy world of Greek folk magic, a world of cursed tablets, potions, and dubious beauty regimens. Let's start with the aggressive approach. Cursing. We've already touched on the Katadesmoi, the lead curse tablets. These were the go-to method for magical revenge. If a rival merchant was stealing your business, you'd decurse his shop. If a lawyer was set to speak against you in court, you'd decurse his tongue. And if a rival in love had captured the affection of someone you desired, you would absolutely curse their looks. Archaeologists have unearthed thousands of these tablets. They are a fascinating and slightly terrifying glimpse into the anxieties of everyday people. A typical beauty curse might read something like this: I bind the face and eyes of rival's name, her hair, her smile, her what? Just as this lad is cold and lifeless, so may her beauty become cold and lifeless. May she appear ugly and undesirable in the eyes of lover's name. These curses were often very specific, targeting the exact features that made the rival attractive. The cursor would write the tablet, fold it, often pierce it with a nail to symbolically fix the curse in place, and then deposit it somewhere they believed had a connection to the underworld or to spirits who could carry out the command well, a grave, or the foundation of a public building. This practice raises a huge question for historians. Did people really believe this one? Or was it just a psychological outlet, a way to vent frustration? The sheer number of tablets found, and the care with which they were made and deposited, suggests a very real belief in their efficacy. For many, this was not a metaphor. It was a practical, if illicit, tool for manipulating the world. It was the dark side of the obsession with beauty, the active, magical effort to destroy it in others. On the flip side, what if you wanted to enhance your own beauty? The line between cosmetics, medicine, and magic was incredibly blurry. We've already mentioned the dangerous white lead powder Symeth Ion used to achieve a pale complexion. But there were countless other recipes and concoctions, many of which sound more like a witch's brew than a beauty routine. Pliny the Elder, a Roman writer whose work compiled a great deal of earlier Greek knowledge, lists all sorts of bizarre remedies to get rid of blemishes. One might use a cream made from crocodile dung to promote hair growth. You could try rubbing bear grease or the ashes of a burnt hedgehog onto your scalp. Many of these medicines involved animal products and other unsavory ingredients, mixed with a healthy dose of magical thinking. You wouldn't just apply the cream. You might do it at a certain phase of the moon, while reciting a specific incantation. Then there were the love potions, or philtre. These were a huge part of the magical landscape. If you were in love with someone who didn't return your affection, you could try to slip them a potion. The goal was to induce an uncontrollable, obsessive love for you. These were not seen as romantic. They were seen as a form of magical assault, a way to dominate someone's will. The ingredients were often exotic and disturbing, rumored to include things like the blood or hair of the desired person, ground-up insects, or potent herbs. A particularly strange and famous magical ingredient was the hippomanes, or horse madness. This was said to be a substance found on the forehead of a newborn foal, or alternatively, a specific discharge from a marine heat. It was believed to be an incredibly powerful aphrodisiac, capable of driving a person wild with desire. The thought of this being an ingredient in a real love potion is, frankly, horrifying. The scholarly debate here revolves around the social function of this magic. Was it a to love the powerless? Some argue that women and people on the fringes of society, who lack direct political or social power, turn to magic as their only means of influencing events. A woman who couldn't legally confront her husband's mistress might resort to cursing her beauty. A man without the status to win a lover's hand might turn to a potion. In this view, magic is the weapon of the marginalized. Others argue that it was far more widespread, used by all classes of society who were looking for an edge in the competitive and uncertain ancient world. Whether you were trying to curse a rival's face or trying to smooth your own with a dubious cream, you were participating in the same underlying belief system, that beauty was a tangible, malleable substance. It could be given, taken away, enhanced, or destroyed through the right combination of words, ingredients, and rituals. While the philosophers debated beauty in their academies, you are mixing a poultice in a smoky room, whispering an incantation over a lead tablet, or anxiously checking a mirror after using a cosmetic made from something you dare rather not think about. For you, beauty is not an abstract form or a set of proportions. It is a magical battleground, and you are using every weapon you can find. Let's leave the philosophical debates and magical underbelly of Athens and travel to a place with a very different, much more severe, and brutally practical view of beauty. We are heading to the Peloponnesian Peninsula, to the militaristic, disciplined, and famously laconic city-state of Sparta. Here, your beauty is worthless unless it is also useful. In Sparta, the concept of beauty is stripped of all its poetic and philosophical frills. It is judged by one primary criterion: its utility to the state. The purpose of a Spartan citizen is to serve the polis, and everything, including your physical form, is evaluated based on how well it fulfills that purpose. For a man, beauty is strength. The idealized Athenian talos, the graceful, perfectly proportioned but perhaps slightly soft body, is of little interest here. Spartan beauty is about hard, functional muscle. It is the body of a warrior, honed by years of relentless training in the agoge, the brutal state-sponsored education and military system that all male citizens must endure from the age of 7. A beautiful man is one with powerful shoulders for thrusting a spear, strong legs for marching in a phalanx, and a body covered in the scars of rigorous training. His beauty is not in his face, but in his physical readiness for war. A man who is merely pretty would be viewed with contempt, seen as soft and disciplined, and useless to the state's defense. For you as a Spartan woman, the standard is just as demanding, but geared toward a different function. Your primary duty to the state is to bear strong, healthy children who will become the next generation of warriors and mothers. Therefore, female beauty is synonymous with health, strength, and fertility, unlike Athenian women, who were expected to be pale and secluded. You are encouraged to be athletic and active. You participate in your own system of state-sponsored education, where you run, wrestle, and throw the javelin and discus. You are not aiming for the slender, delicate form admired in Athens. You are building a powerful, robust body capable of surviving childbirth and producing vigorous infants. A beautiful Spartan woman is tall, muscular, and radiates an aura of formidable health. This focus on eugenics, the deliberate breeding for desirable traits, is a core part of Spartan society. It is institutionalized in a way that is chilling to the modern mind. According to the historian Plutarch, when a child was born in Sparta, it was not the father, but a council of state elders who had the final say over its life. The newborn infant was brought before them and examined. If the baby was deemed well-built and sturdy, it was allowed to live and be raised as a citizen. If it was found to be ill-born and deformed, the elders would order it to be left to die of exposure in a chasm at the foot of Mount Taygetos, a place known as the Apiodate deposits. This practice, while famously associated with Sparta, is a major point of scholarly contention. Did this state-sponsored infanticide really happen on a systematic scale? Archaeologists have excavated the supposed Apiodate and have found human remains, but they seem to be mostly those of adult men, not infants. This has led some historians to argue that the story of tossing babies into a chasm was an exaggeration, a piece of black legend propaganda spread by Athens and other rivals to paint the Spartans as monstrously cruel. Others maintain that the practice likely did exist, but perhaps not in the dramatic way Plutarch described. The debate highlights how difficult it is to separate the reality of Spartan life from the myth created around it by other Greeks. A quirky and famous aspect of Spartan society that reflects their unique values is their attitude toward clothing. While other Greek women were heavily robed, you, as a Spartan girl, famously wore a short, simple tunic called a peplos. It was slid up the side, which meant your thighs were often exposed when you moved. Other Greeks, particularly the Athenians, were scandalized by this, calling Spartan women phenomeroids, or thigh showers. For the Spartans, this wasn't about immodesty. It was about practicality and the celebration of the strong, athletic female body. It was a visual statement that their women were not delicate, hidden objects, but active, vital contributors to the strength of the state. So, in Sparta, the dangers of being too pretty in the traditional sense are turned on their head. Being conventionally beautiful, in the soft, Athenian way, would make you an object of suspicion and scorn. It would mark you as un-Spartan, as someone who is not contributing to the collective good. The real danger lies in failing to meet the state's rigorous physical standards. If you are a man who is not strong enough, or a woman who is not perceived as healthy enough to bear strong children, you risk social marginalization. Your body is not your own. It is a resource belonging to the state. And if that resource is deemed inadequate, your value as a person is diminished. In Sparta, beauty is not a gift or a curse from the gods. It is a duty. And failing in that duty is the most dangerous thing of all. Let's leave the harsh barracks of Sparta and travel to a place where the male body was celebrated not just for its military function, but for its aesthetic perfection. Olympia. For years, the Greek world would set aside its endless squabbles for a sacred truth, and athletes would gather to compete in the most prestigious games in all of Hellas. And here, your beauty, or rather your physical excellence, is put on public display in the most direct way possible. You compete in the nude. The practice of athletic nudity is one of the most distinctive and, to outsiders, strangest features of Greek culture. You, as an athlete preparing for the foot race or the pentathlon, strip off your clothes. You then coat your body in olive oil, not just to protect your skin from the sun and dust, but to accentuate the definition of your muscles, making them glisten under the hot sun. Your body becomes a living sculpture, an object of intense scrutiny and admiration. The origin of this tradition is shrouded in myth. One story, recorded by the travel writer Pausanias, tells of a runner named Orsippus of Megara, who, in 720 BC, lost his loincloth mid-race. He went on to win, and from then on, the practice of competing naked was adopted. Another tale attributes it to the Spartans, who, with their characteristic emphasis on the body, were the first to exercise in the nude. Whatever the origin, by the classical period, it was a defining feature of Greek identity. To the Greeks, exercising naked was a sign of civilization. They looked at the Persians and other barbarians who were squeamish about nudity and saw it as a sign of their inferiority and lack of sophistication. For you, the athlete, this culture of nudity creates a unique pressure. You are not just being judged on your performance, how fast you run, how far you throw the javelin. You are being judged on the beauty of your form. An athlete who was both victorious and physically beautiful was elevated to the status of a superstar. He was seen as a true favorite of the gods, blessed with both skill, technique, and physical grace charis. Poets would write odes in his honor, and sculptors would be commissioned to create statues of him to be placed in the sanctuary at Olympia. These statues are a key part of the story. The ultimate prize for an Olympic victor was not money, but a simple wreath of olive leaves. The real reward was glory, or kalios. Part of this glory was having a statue of yourself erected. The most famous sculptor of athletes was Myron, whose disco bolos, the discus thrower, is one of the most iconic images of antiquity. However, these statues were not realistic portraits. They were idealized. The sculptor would not just copy your body, he would perfect it, conforming it to the established canon of ideal proportions. The statue was less about what you actually looked like, and more about what the perfect athlete should look like. Your victory gave you the right to be immortalized as an ideal. This brings up a fascinating scholarly debate. How did this athletic nudity affect the social dynamics? Some historians argue it was a democratizing force. In the gymnasium or at Olympia, stripped to fine clothes and armor that signaled wealth and status, men were theoretically equal. A poor but talented boy could compete alongside the son of an aristocrat, both judged on their physical merit alone. Others argue the opposite, that it actually reinforced the aristocratic ideal. Only the wealthy had the leisure time to devote to the years of training required to achieve a beautiful, sculpted physique. The gymnasium was the domain of the elite, and athletic nudity simply became another way to display their well-fed, well-trained bodies, a status symbol that the laboring classes could not hope to match. And here's a quirky, but important, detail. What about the women? Well, for the most part, they were completely excluded. Married women were forbidden from even attending the Olympic Games, on pain of death. There was, however, a separate, smaller festival held at Olympia in honor of Hera, called the Heraean Games. Here, unmarried young women would compete in a foot race, and unlike the men, they were not completely nude. They wore the short peplos tunic, similar to the Spartans, which left one shoulder and breast bare. It was a rare, sanctioned opportunity for women to engage in competitive sport, but it was always secondary to the main, male-dominated event. For you as a male athlete, the pressure is immense. Your body is constantly on display, constantly being judged against a perfect, sculptural ideal. Your beauty and your athletic success are fused. If you win, your beautiful form will be celebrated as a sign of divine favor. But the intense focus on the perfect male body also creates a fiercely competitive environment where any physical flaw could be a source of shame or ridicule. The nectances that is supposed to be a mark of civilization also makes you incredibly vulnerable. Your body laid bare for the judgment of all. Your physical beauty is not just a personal attribute. It is a public spectacle, a source of civic pride or personal shame, played out on the biggest stage in the Greek world. Your success as an athlete or your charisma as a politician has now made you wildly popular. The crowds in Athens cheer when you walk by. Your name is on every owner's lips. You are admired. You are handsome. You are influential. And this is precisely why you are now in terrible danger. The Athenian democracy has a unique and powerful tool for dealing with individuals who become too popular. And you are about to become its target. This is the practice of ostracism. Imagine this. Once a year, the citizens of Athens gather in the agora. They are asked a simple question by the magistrates. Do you wish to hold an ostracism? If the majority says yes, a date is set for a few months later. On that day, a special area of the marketplace is fenced off. The citizens file in, one by one, and each is handed a small shard of pottery, called an oistrakon. This is where the name comes from. These pottery shards were the scrap paper of the ancient world, cheap and plentiful. On your oistrakon, you are to write the name of the one individual you believe has become too powerful and is a potential threat to the democracy. You don't need to list a crime or provide any evidence. It is a purely political, preventative measure. The idea is to neutralize a politician before he can become a tyrant. After everyone has cast their vote, the ostraka are collected and counted. If a minimum of 6 their votes have been cast, the winner, the person whose name appears most often, is the loser. The punishment is not death or imprisonment. It is 10 years of exile. You are given 10 days to get your affairs in order. And then you must leave the territory of Attica. You do not lose your property, and you are not stripped of your citizenship. If you survive the 10 years, you are allowed to return and resume your life. But for a decade, you are banished, cut off from your home, your family, and your source of power and influence. This is the danger you now face. Your popularity, your charm, your good looks, the very things that brought you to prominence, are now the arguments being used against you. Your opponents whisper in the assembly and in the marketplace. He is too ambitious. They say, look how the people adore him. It's unhealthy for the democracy. He has the charisma of a king, not a citizen. They don't accuse you of a crime. They accuse you of being too great. The practice of ostracism is a fascinating subject for historical debate. Was it a brilliant democratic safety valve that successfully prevented tyranny for almost a century? Or was it a crude, populist tool that allowed jealous rivals to eliminate more talented opponents through what was essentially a state-sanctioned popularity contest in reverse? The evidence suggests it was a bit of both. It did successfully exile several powerful figures who might have had tyrannical ambition, like Hipparchus, a relative of the former tyrant Hippias. But it was also used to settle personal and political scores. Prominent, undefective statesmen like Themistocles, the hero of the Persian Wars, and Aristides, known as the Just, were both ostracized at the height of their careers. Archaeologists digging in the Athenian Agora and the Keramikoes, the Potter's Quarter, have found thousands of these ostraca, giving us a direct, tangible connection to this process. Some of them are quite revealing. For instance, they found a large cache of 190 ostraca, all bearing the name of Themistocles, all seemingly written by a very small number of hands. This suggests that political factions might have mass-produced these shards and handed them out to illiterate or undecided voters, a kind of ancient ballot stuffing operation. One of the most famous and poignant stories about ostracism, told by Plutarch, concerns Aristides the Just. On the day of the vote, an illiterate farmer, not recognizing the famous statesman, approached Aristides and asked him to write the name Aristides on his oestracol. Aristides, surprised, asked the farmer if Aristides had ever done him any harm. No. The farmer replied, I don't even know the man. I'm just sick and tired of hearing everyone call him the Just. Aristides, without revealing his identity, simply took the shard and wrote his own name on it, sealing his exile. Whether the story is true or not, it perfectly captures the spirit of ostracism. It could be a judgment based not on misdeeds, but on sheer overexposure. So, you wait as the votes are counted. Your entire career hangs in the balance, a victim of your own success. Your beauty and charisma, which you thought were your greatest assets, have marked you as exceptional. And in a radical democracy that prized the equality of all citizens, to be too exceptional was to be a threat. It's the ultimate tall poppy syndrome. Institutionalized. Your popularity became a liability, and your admirers, whipped into a frenzy of suspicion by your rivals, are the ones who will now vote to cast you out. You are not being exiled for being bad. You are being exiled for being too good, too popular, and too beautiful in the eyes of the people. The sun is beginning to set on the golden age of classical Greece. A new, formidable power is rising to the west. Rome. As the Roman Republic expands and eventually conquers the Greek mainland, it doesn't just absorb Greek territory, it absorbs Greek culture. But the Romans are not simple copycats. They are master adapters and modifiers. They take the Greek obsession with beauty and reshape it to fit their own, more pragmatic and power-focused values. You are now in Rome, a city of brick that is slowly being transformed into a city of marble. You see Greek statues everywhere. After the conquest of Greek cities like Corinth and Syracuse, Roman generals looted them of their art. Thousands of Greek sculptures were shipped back to Rome and put on display in public squares and in the private villas of the wealthy elite. For the first time, Romans are surrounded by the Greek ideal of beauty, the perfect proportions, the serene expressions, the athletic nudity. But the Roman reaction to this influx of beauty is complex and divided. On one hand, they admire it. They recognize the superior artistry and the pleasing aesthetics. Greek culture becomes a massive status symbol. To be considered educated and sophisticated, a Roman nobleman had to speak Greek, study Greek philosophy, and appreciate Greek art. Having a collection of Greek statues was the ultimate sign of wealth and worldliness. On the other hand, many conservative Romans are deeply suspicious of this Greek influence. They see it as decadent, effeminate, and corrupting. A powerful politician like Cato, the elder, famously railed against the Greek disease, fearing that the love of luxury, philosophy, and sensual beauty would soften Roman men and erode their traditional virtues of discipline, duty, and military toughness furthers. For these conservatives, the idealized, naked beauty of a Greek statue is not something to be admired, but a sign of moral decay. You can see this Roman ambivalence in their own portrait sculpture. While the Greeks idealized their subjects, the Romans, particularly during the Republic, developed a tradition of stark realism, or verism. When you look at a portrait bust of a Roman senator, you don't see a perfected, godlike face. You see every wrinkle, every wart, every receding hairline. You see a face etched with the seriousness and experience of a life dedicated to public service. For the Romans, this was a different kind of beauty, the beauty of character, of gravitas, of a life lived in the service of the state. A wrinkled brow was not a flaw. It was a badge of honor, a sign of wisdom and authority. However, as the Republic gives way to the Empire, things begin to change. The first emperor, Augustus, launches a massive cultural program that consciously borrows the idealized style of classical Greece. He wants to portray himself not as a wrinkly old senator, but as an eternally youthful, handsome, godlike figure. His official portraits, like the famous Augustus of Primapora, depict him as a perfect, athletic man in his prime, deliberately echoing the style of Polyclite, Astori PH or OS. Here, the Greek ideal of beauty is coded for political propaganda. It's used to create a divine aura around the emperor, to project an image of power, stability, and a new golden age. Your beauty, if you are the emperor, is no longer just a personal attribute. It is a two-loved statecraft. What about Roman women? Here too, beauty is closely tied to status and power. The empresses and wealthy aristocratic women set the trends. We can trace the changing fashions through their portrait busts, particularly their incredibly elaborate hairstyles. In the Flavian period, for instance, women sported enormous, towering beehives of curls that were so complex they required wigs and hairpieces. These hairstyles were a conspicuous display of wealth. They showed that a woman had the money to afford skilled hairdressing slaves and, more importantly, that she had hours of leisure time to sit and have her hair done. A beautiful woman wasn't just pretty. She was a walking billboard for her family's wealth and social standing. Here's a small, weird detail about Roman cosmetics. While they used many of the same substances as the Greeks, including the toxic white lid for power, they had their own unique additions. One of the most sought-after ingredients for face masks was the sweat of gladiators. It was collected from the palaestra where they trained, bottled in small vials, and sold to wealthy women as a high-end cosmetic, believed to improve the complexion. The appeal seems to have been a mixture of celebrity culture and a belief in the power of a strong, virile man's essence. The academic debate here focuses on the concept of cultural appropriation. Did the Romans simply steal Greek culture, or did they engage in a more creative dialogue with it? The consensus is that it was the latter. The Romans were not passive recipients. They actively selected the elements of Greek culture that suited their needs and adapted them. They took the Greek aesthetic and married it to their own values of power, status, and pragmatism. The veristic portrait, the imperial ideal, the fashionable empress, these are all uniquely Roman creations, born from the fusion of two different worldviews. In Rome, the dangers of beauty are less about offending the gods and more about navigating the complex hierarchies of power and status. Beauty as a tool, an accessory to power. For an emperor, it projects divinity. For a senator, it can be a sign of corrupting Greek influence. For a woman, it is a key part of the display of wealth that defines her family's place in the social order. The Greek Song of Beauty, once about gods and myths, is now being sung with a heavier, more pragmatic Roman accent. We've traveled a long and winding road. We've been a divine gift, a cursed priestess, a catalyst for war, an ignored prophet, and a lovelorn boy staring into a pool. We've navigated the treacherous politics of Athens, the brutal discipline of Sparta, and the pragmatic power plays of Rome. We've seen how a beautiful face could be a blessing, but more often, it was a bullseye, attracting the most dangerous forces in the cosmos and in society. Now, as our journey comes to a close, let's pull back and look at the echo of this ancient anxiety. The core of the Greek fear of beauty was a fear of imbalance. In a world that prized order, moderation's off rosy knee, and knowing your place, extreme beauty was a disruptive force. It was a violation of the natural order, a mortal possessing a divine attribute. This disruption could anger the gods. As we saw with Aphrodite's jealousy, it could destabilize society. As the popularity of Alcibiades proved, it could upset the cosmic balance, forcing a negotiation between the queen of the underworld and the goddess of love over the custody of Adonis. The stories we've explored are the myths a culture tells itself to cope with a powerful, irrational force. Desire, envy, admiration, obsession, these are primal human emotions. The Greeks, with their love of order and reason, tried to categorize and explain them by weaving them into narratives about gods and heroes. The beautiful person becomes the focal point for all these messy, dangerous feelings. The myth of the dangerously beautiful is a way to talk about the social chaos that erupts when desire and envy are let off the leash. This brings us to a final, lingering question that historians and classicists still grapple with. To what extent did these myths reflect the lived reality of an average, beautiful person? Was a pretty girl in a small village genuinely afraid of being compared to Aphrodite? Was a handsome boy constantly worried that Zeus might be watching him from a cloud? Probably not in such literal terms, but these stories created a cultural script. They taught people that beauty was powerful, that it attracted attention, not all of it good, and that it could provoke envy and obsession. The myths provided a framework for understanding the social consequences of being an outlier. The danger was necessarily a literal lightning bolt from Zeus, but the very real social lightning of jealousy, rumor, and unwanted attention from the powerful. One last, slightly strange detail is the Greek concept of the evil eye, or bia eschania. This was the belief that a look of excessive praise or envy could be actively harmful, bringing bad luck or illness to the person being looked at. It was considered especially dangerous to praise a beautiful child too much, for fear of attracting this negative energy, or the attention of a jealous god. People would use apiotrope, icy charms, things meant to ward off evil, to protect themselves. This folk belief is the ground level, everyday expression of the same anxiety we see in the grand myths. It's the fear that being too admirable, too beautiful, makes you a target for unseen, malevolent forces. The echoes of this ancient Greek anxiety are surprisingly loud in our own world. We no longer worry about Zeus or cursed tablets, but the core issues remain. We still see the curse of celebrity, where intense public adoration can lead to a loss of privacy and personal ruin. We still have the phenomenon of the femme fatale or the himbo, archetypes of people whose beauty is seen as a dangerous, distracting, or even unintelligent quality. We talk about the pretty privilege that gives people an unfair advantage, and in the same breath, we express suspicion of those who are too perfect. The obsession with an idealized, almost inhuman standard of beauty, once set by marble sculptures, is now set by digitally altered images on social media. We still struggle with the idea of Kalo Kaga, Thea judging people's character based on their appearance. We still see beauty used as a tool in politics and marketing. The fundamental Greek anxiety that beauty is a powerful, disruptive, and dangerous force that must be controlled, explained, or neutralized has never really left us. It has simply changed its clothes, trading its chitin toga for a digital filter and a celebrity endorsement. The stage is different. The actors have changed, but the drama of beauty and its consequences continues to unfold.